Muted. Fuck. Okay. What a start to the show. Hello, everybody. This is not Movie Battleground. I just still don't have a proper intro, but I guess that goes along with the theme of the show. Welcome back to the third episode of Battleground Casual, our weekly discussion show where we sit back, chat about film. Instead, I am, of course, joined by Matt Beer, as always, sir. How are you doing?
Oh, I am. I'm doing well. Internet is out in my house, so I am on my data right now on my phone. So hopefully my audio goes through and works. If not, then that's just great.
Absolutely. So obviously, as the title of the episode says, we are going to be doing an Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania spoiler review. We have a couple of great people in the back to join us for a full panel discussion. But before we get into it, I had a couple of quick things I wanted to ring off here. The first thing is I want to thank everyone who checked out the first two episodes of the show. All things considered, for a talk show featuring people who you probably really don't care about the opinions of, we got a decent number of views. It was actually decently done there. So thank you guys for tuning in and checking out. Secondly, Matt, last week we were not here. You were on vacation, so you were never planned to be here anyways. And we
Yeah.
had basically every single person involved at the show, except for myself, had some sort of scheduling conflict come up at the last minute. And nobody wants
Yeah.
to hear me talk alone for a few hours. So we did not do the show. But while you were on vacation, you had an interesting story happen that you wanted to recount. So we'll tell that story before we get into talking about the story of our film tonight, which there's not a big one, but that was a bad transition.
Right.
Tell your story, Matt.
All right. Are you sure you didn't want to do a show last week, Aaron? Could have been the ASMR episode of Battleground Casual, where you just talk very seductively in the mic. And my internet's acting up, I think.
That's what you get for trying to suggest that I ASMR the audience.
Hey, you never know. Could reach a new audience. But so yeah, I wasn't even supposed to be here today. I was supposed to be heading home for my vacation. I left last weekend to go on this vacation, and we got to Orlando because that's where we were going to be. Pretty early on Saturday, and I thought I was actually going to be able to be on the show with you guys. Well, 3 hours before getting to our unit, because we were staying at a resort, I got an email from these people. It's Vicasa is the company. Lovely, lovely Vicasa.
Not a
They send
sponsor
me an
because we're about
email.
to throw them under a bus.
Yeah, they should sponsor us after what happened. Uh, Vicasa, they ran my whole thing. They usually do a lot of the resorts, and they email me, and they also give me a phone call, but I don't get phone calls if either your number's not saved in my phone or if I don't interact with the number. If it's just a new number calling, then it goes straight to voicemail because I don't want to deal with spam. And this is 3 hours before we get there. I get an email saying, "Hey, so unfortunately, that unit that you booked a month and a half ago, yeah, you can't stay there. AC issues. We got to move you to a different unit. We got this one. It's on hold. It's available. If you want it, we'll give it to you. If you don't, then we'll just give you your money back, and you can figure out what to do from there." And we were going to get an upgrade because we had a 2 bedroom unit initially. We were going to get a 5 bedroom. So I was like, awesome. This is just a great start to this vacation, right? Because we're going to have more rooms. We don't need that many rooms, but we're going to have more rooms. So my mom's calling people like, "Hey, you want to fly to Florida? We got extra rooms." Thank God nobody said yes. So we get to the resort that we got moved to, and we pull up to the thing, and you know how you go to a theme park and you have like the parking people, and you go up to those towers, and they let you in when you pay. Well, this resort, like all the other resorts, had it. So you go up, and they'll ask you for your name, the address of your unit, all that good stuff. And I got an email that said, "Hey, you're booked, you're good to go." And I went up, gave them my name, gave them my ID, told them the address, and they looked me up, and they said, "Well, you're not in our system at all." And we're like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, you're not in the system for that address." So We had to pull over, call the people because, you know, they were the ones that moved us to another unit. And I'm on the phone for an hour. And 30 minutes into this conversation, they said, hey, you're in the system now. I asked the person to stay on the phone just in case. Go up to the thing, not in the system still. So we're on the phone with them for an hour trying to get this whole thing figured out because, you know, I need a place to stay and sleep. So we finally get it figured out. We're finally in the system. You know, they give us our parking info, all that good stuff. You know, we're registered in the system so people can use the pool and whatnot if they want to. So we get to the unit that we're supposed to stay at. And I notice because you get two parking spots and one's labeled, the other's not labeled. Somebody's in one of our spots. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe somebody accidentally parked in this spot. So we go up to the unit. I enter the code. It works. I open the door. There's a family right across from us in the thing. And I'm just like, hello? And they look at me and they're like, what? They kind of go up. So, like, what's going on? And we basically explain, hey, we got moved to this unit because the one we were initially going to stay at, the AC is out. And then the husband says, oh, yeah, you're screwed because initially we were staying at a different unit, but the hot water was out. Turns out the people that owned the unit that they were supposed to stay at didn't pay the hot water bill. So it was out. So they got moved to that unit the day before we got there. Now, remember, I said that they said it was available and it was on hold the day we got into Florida. There was already a family in there the night before. So I'm on the phone for 2 hours, and I'm very patient with these people. I'm always patient with people on the phone trying to figure something out because I figure if I go into it yelling at them, then nothing's going to get done. They're not going to work with me. So I'm very patient. I'm working with them, and I'm saying, hey, when am I going to have a place to sleep? I need to sleep somewhere. You know, we traveled 17 hours to get here. Where are we staying? Like, can you please tell us? And they're, you know, like, oh, we're looking for a place, and we're looking it up. There's nothing available. So I finally lose it, and I snap on them, and I basically I go off. I'm not like cussing at them because I figured if I cuss, then I'm just going to be in a losing situation. So I'm starting to flip out on them. I'm like, are you kidding me? You tell us 3 hours before we're supposed to check in that we're out of luck with the first unit, and because you guys are idiots, Picasa, you moved us to a unit that already had people in there. And I basically told them, so this is what we're going to do. You're going to give us a place to stay, and you're going to give me my money back. And my mom's in the background saying, give us Disney tickets. Give us Disney tickets. And I'm just like, I figured, you know, if I get my money back, I can just buy the Disney tickets for them. But I'm like, you're going to give me a place to stay, and you're going to give me my money back. You're going to do it right now because of your screw up. We currently don't have a place to stay. And, you know, they're on hold trying to figure something out. And I get an email, Airbnb list, which, you know, cool. They call me back and say, hey, so there are no units available in Florida where you guys are going to be staying at, but there are some Airbnbs that we just sent you. I was like, oh, cool. So you guys are going to pay for it, right? Because you already took my money. And they're like, no. And then my dad takes the phone immediately and he's like, look, we spent thousands of dollars. They didn't spend money on Disney tickets, but he's like, we spent thousands of dollars on Disney tickets. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give us our money back and you're going to pay for the Airbnb, or you're going to be talking to our lawyers pretty soon. And I guarantee you it's going to cost a whole lot more if you don't give us a place to stay than it would be if you gave us a place to stay. Eventually, it just got to the point where it was going nowhere. I was able to get my money back, plus they gave us 25% more, which they're going to send us separately. So we decide, because there's nowhere to stay in Florida, we're just going to drive to Georgia, then we're going to go home. And I almost called my boss, but I luckily got my money back. And eventually I was like, screw it. There's some hotels available tomorrow in Florida. Let's just get a hotel. We'll get some Disney tickets. We'll go to Disney for a day, and then we'll figure out what to do from there. So ended up going back to Orlando, got to go to Epcot and Magic Kingdom. Then we stayed in Gatlinburg, stayed at the Smoky Mountains, pretty close to where the Cocaine Bear stuff took place. And we saw Cocaine Bear there. And then we ended up getting home yesterday. So that was easily one of the most stressful like times ever. And I even told the people, whether it's like the highest end hotel that you can think of or just a complete dump that I've stayed at, I've never dealt with anything like that before. So I guess the moral of the story is just because a company screws up and screws you over on a vacation, you could still make something out of it if they give you your money back right away. So,
With money,
that was
anything is possible.
yeah, anything's possible. I was able to get my money back, and I was able to get a pretty nice hotel near Disney Springs. Went to Gideon's. Did you go to Gideon's ever? Like
I
the
don't know
cookie
what
place?
that is, dude. I haven't been to Disney in such a long time. I quit and just walked the fuck
So
away.
let me grab it. So
all right, while he's grabbing
it's
that, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our panel because while Cocaine Bear was a movie that came out this weekend, we are not discussing Cocaine Bear tonight because there's nothing to. Let's be real. Outside of the fact that it's probably a fun movie, there's nothing to talk about. No, instead we are going to be diving
It's a fun,
full
good movie.
on into Ant-Man. So while Matt's showing off what he has there, what is it?
Yeah, let me show you the cookies. So this is the chocolate chip cookie. And it's a little bake shop. It's kind of near Planet Hollywood there. It's the chocolate chip. You got all these chocolate chips. They're pretty good cookies. $6, but I mean, I guess it's kind of worth it. They got a really nice cookies and cream one.
I mean, you still have it how many days later?
Couple days. I got these on, well, actually not a couple days. I got them on Tuesday, but I mean, they still taste pretty normal.
All right, so let's go ahead and bring in our panel for this evening. Joining us to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, we are joined by one of TMG's own. First, he is Jacob West. We are also joined by a fellow member of the movie Battleground. He is one of our hosts and behind-the-scenes helpers. Mr. Austin Howell is with us. Also joining us, we have two competitors from a match that went up this week. It went up yesterday. We currently have Mr. Sinister Alec Miller's back wall. He'll be here in just a second. He walked away. Oh, there's
and dog.
And the person that he competed against in the Battleground, Mr. JPO, Jordan Owens.
We're not talking Cocaine Bear?
No, I mean, I can give you 30 seconds if you want. Are you rubbing your gums?
I took the show literal, so sorry. I guess I prepared too much.
Just not more than that bear did.
I thought we were going to dive into the intricacies of Cocaine Bear and, like, you know, really deep.
I don't think Elizabeth Banks can spell intricacies, let alone put them in her films.
I don't think she can direct.
How did the bear feel? That's our question. How does the bear feel when he
the bear felt amazing, and then it died.
Actually, the real life story is actually really horrific.
If I was gay and did cocaine, I'd be a cocaine bear.
Hey, there you go. It's true.
And
I mean, hey, look, some gay guys might call you still a cocaine bear.
Hey, I'll take it.
I don't know what they would be, like a leopard, cocaine leopard. It's what they call me, a leopard or a ferret.
I say you're not quite twink, but leopard, yeah, is that a thing? I don't know.
I don't know. I have to ask.
Yeah, that's where your show's going, Aaron. Yeah, this is where your show's going.
From the gay community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to ask a couple.
Is anybody here?
From the
anybody
LGBTQ.
Okay.
That's not. I don't want to be a bear. Nice, hairy and chubby.
All right. So as we go ahead and jump into it, Ant-Man's probably not a film that I need to introduce to anybody, but I like to imagine I have a small semblance of professionalism. So I do have a write-up here surmising Ant-Man and the Wasp, if you'll give me the due diligence. Last weekend, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania released into theaters. The film sees Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly return in their leading roles, seeing them move into new roles in life following saving the world in Avengers Endgame. But when a device made by Lang's daughter, Cassie, now played by Catherine Newton, accidentally sucks them into the quantum realm, they'll come across their biggest foe yet, Kang, played by Jonathan Majors. In addition to the aforementioned stars, Quantumania sees the return of franchise regulars Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer, Corey Stoll, and David Dastmalchian, and adds newcomers Katie O'Brien, William Jackson Harper, and Bill Murray. Quantumania is the third MCU entry directed by Peyton Reed, who becomes only the second director to complete a trilogy of films, and is written by former Rick and Morty writer Jeff Loveness. The movie got a rocky response from critics, settling in at a 47% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, the lowest in the MCU, with an average score of 5.6 out of 10. Critics praised the performances, specifically of Majors, Pfeiffer, and Rudd, but criticized the film's decision to abandon the feel of earlier films for the sci-fi approach taken. Audiences were far kinder, with an 84% approval rating and a domestic opening weekend of 104 million, rising to over 120 million with the 4-day weekend to meet expectations that were predicted, and making it the first film to open with over 100 million on its opening weekend this year. So in many ways, this film is both a success and a failure for Marvel. So to start off the conversation, I'm just going to go around briefly and have everyone give their opinion on where they stand in terms of, because it seems like everybody is sort of on a positive or a negative end. So I just want to get an idea of where everybody stands in this. Matt, I'll go to you first.
So to me, this is a middle of the road MCU movie. It's fine. It's nothing special. It's not a great movie by any means. It's not a terrible movie. I will say I thought the first half was flat out bad. And if the movie would have been as good as the first half was for the entire film, it would have been probably my least favorite MCU movie. I remember sitting in there and you get to, I'd say about 45 minutes of the movie, and I'm just thinking, oh, wow, this movie really is as bad as some people are saying. But then, you know, the movie really gets going when Kang gets introduced, and I really think it changes, and it feels like two different people made this movie. You know, the first half and the second half. It feels like the first half, it's an inexperienced filmmaker doing it. The second half, it's a more experienced filmmaker doing it. Jonathan Majors is fantastic as Kang. Paul Rudd's really good. I had no problems with the acting in general. Some of the writing's not great, but I mean, it's a Marvel movie. It's not Shawshank Redemption. I'm not sitting here expecting, you know, an Academy Award level writing. So it didn't really bother me. It's not great, but whatever. It does its job. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I am a little worried that the same writer is going to be doing Kang Dynasty, although I feel like with a better director, which it's going to have with Daniel Destin, right? Daniel Destin, or is it Destin Daniel Cretton?
It's Destin Daniel Cretton.
Yeah, with him, I think he's a better director than Peyton Reed. So I do think that movie is going to end up being better, even though you got the same writer involved. Writing wasn't great. The CGI, especially in the first half, was yikes bad. I liked MODOK. I actually did enjoy MODOK in this movie. I know he's somebody that is very mixed, but I enjoyed MODOK. That I thought it worked in this movie for what it was, and I had no issue with it at all. And I mean, I expect him, you know, not getting into spoilers, but I do expect him in the future at some point. You know, I mean, it's the multiverse, so anything can happen. But no, I enjoyed him. Catherine Newton was okay in the movie, I thought, but overall, it's a fine movie. You know, it's not harmful. It's not as bad as Thor: Love and Thunder or Captain Marvel or, you know, Guardians 2, Iron Man 2. It's literally, for me, just right now, sitting just overall kind of thinking about it, it's in the middle, in my opinion. I mean, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10, personally. It's not a movie I would go and pay to see again unless, you know, I had like my dad who didn't go see it say, hey, you want to go see the movie? Then at that point, I'd go see it again. It's just middle of the road.
All right. And with a full review from Matt Beer, Papa, yeah, I'm going to go to you. No, I'm just giving
that
you
was like a minute.
No, it was not.
That was a long ass minute.
We could clip that and give you
YouTube channel. And that story at the beginning was 2 minutes.
Let's just
no,
say
the story in the beginning was like 5.
Matt, let's just say if
12.
you were in a 4-minute debate, the other competitor would have had no time to talk at all. And then you would have been yelled at for going past your time, because that was a lot more than.
All right, Papa.
I started talking
I'm gonna go
at 18.
Papa, I'm going to go over to you. Sure. Brief thoughts on the film, where you stand, positive or negative.
Yes. So brief, meaning I'll take 15 minutes. Sweet. Very similar to Matt. I find this very middle of the road. I had fun for some parts. There was some jokes that kind of started getting into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 level for me. that I was just like, we don't need to keep making these jokes. Like, let's have some serious characters here. I'd also really liked MODOK in every aspect except for looking at MODOK. Whenever he was in his full armor, I thought that was really cool looking. And then when they get to just his head, it was funny at first. And then when they kept showing it, I was like, this really looks bad. I think it would have been hilarious had they showed it for a little bit and then just strictly had him be in the mask or change up the look of it a little bit. But really, I would much rather watch a lot more Marvel movies. But there are a lot of movies in the MCU that I can't stand that I thought this did a lot better than. I also really enjoyed when Ant-Man and Cassie were interacting. The whole like jump and push, use your momentum on you. And then she's like, I need some orange slices. It's like, yeah, that'll happen. I did really like that too. But I'd probably go 5 or 6 out of 10. Very similar to Matt.
Yeah, I'm probably a little more positive than you guys. Again, I score things out of 10. I went with a 7.5. At the end of the day, it's a good movie. I don't think it's average to good. I don't think it's anything exceptional. I don't think it's anything horrible. At the end of the day, I did find it entertaining. It is still the same actors from the previous films giving good performances, and I think the humor did work for me because it is very Rick and Morty-esque at times, and that show does make me laugh. So I didn't have an issue with some of the humor. I think the film's biggest weakness is I think it tries to do a little too much. I think it tries to reestablish the status quo of the Ant-Man films. It introduces all these new characters, or in MODOK's case, different versions of characters that we've seen previously, and I don't think it gives any of them room to breathe. They either have nothing going on with them or they're being thrown straight into the jokes. So I think that was the biggest issue for me. But at the end of the day, it entertained me the whole way through, and it wasn't an excessive length, because I do think that's become an issue with some of the MCU films. They're mediocre or they're fine, but then they're 2.5 hours, and it's like, this doesn't need to be this long. I appreciated that it was, if it wasn't going to dive in depth on any of this, I appreciated that it was at least brief. Jordan, I'll go to you next. What were your thoughts? Briefly, positive, negative. Where do you kind of stand on it?
Forever long.
Jesus, Matt, don't get so defensive.
No, hot take. I find it to be a middle of the road Marvel movie. Oh wait, everyone's been saying that. No, I'm kind of with you guys for the large part here. It's middle, if not even a little bit lower here, because I don't think this is one I'm going to necessarily go back to a lot. I enjoyed it though, especially for a first time viewing. It's kind of within the last kind of few Marvel movies here. It's with their kind of in Thor, Love and Thunder, and Wakanda Forever. Maybe a little lower than maybe a little higher than Thor, maybe a little lower than Black Panther, maybe in the middle of those two, if you could just adjust the last few. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. I kind of almost wish we didn't we stayed to the real world in a way. Like, I missed Michael Pena. Even Das Malchin is just a voice. He's not the character we've seen before from him. Right. I think some people kind of get lost in the shuffle. We get a little bit more Michelle Pfeiffer, which is cool, a little bit more of her backstory, which I liked. And I did like Kang, talking about the ending with him, and even the ending itself was a little flat. I felt like the exact ending with Paul Rudd, but like I said, I had a good time. It's one that I probably will rewatch again at some point, but not one I think I'll go back to a lot compared to the others. Middle to not little lower than middle.
Absolutely. So obviously the four of us are varying scales of it, but I'd say somewhat in agreement. Alec and Pez, you guys bring the most diversity and opinion. Pez, I'll go to you next.
I think this movie's pretty terrible in almost all aspects. I think it's a pretty boring film anytime Jonathan Majors is not on screen. Even when he is, I think he's doing his best with a pretty bad script. I don't think they give Kang particularly anything interesting really to do. I have my problems with the actual character and the fact that this is the first we're seeing of this guy who's supposedly supposed to be the next Thanos. And I think you completely dropped the ball and you've gotten off to a really bad start with him. None of these properties that we've seen so far in this multiverse saga have treated the multiverse the same. They've all kind of used it however they feel like using it. So I still don't really understand how the multiverse even works because every property that uses it for however the plot needs it to be used. So I still don't even understand. I don't think the writers are collaborating on what this is supposed to be. I'm still confused as to the direction of where this saga is going. There's no connective threads. There's nothing that's pointing to any kind of singular direction, which has me completely worried. So while it's not an absolute cringe disaster as Thor: Love and Thunder was, where I think that is easily the worst movie of the MCU so far, to where every minute of the movie is like a Freeberg and Seltzer Thor parody film. Really, really bad. And Eternals is like the most boring of all the movies, as well as being bad. This is still pretty low. I found myself damn near falling asleep multiple times. I don't think there's anything particularly interesting going on with any of the characters. We rush right. We got to get to the quantum realm as fast as possible. We got to get there in 10 minutes. Let's go. And fuck all the reasons why. Like, we can't do anything to develop Ant-Man and Cassie's relationship whatsoever, despite them being apart for 5 years. We don't get any of that. We got to get right to the quantum realm. Get right to the jokes, because the writer of the Jimmy Kimmel show has to introduce Kang, and oh my god, if he's writing that Kang movie, I am worried. If he wrote this movie and he's the one in charge of this shit, not directing wise, but if he's the one writing the script for this, I'm really worried for where this is going to go, that it could get even worse. So, I'm probably the lowest, obviously, of anybody on this panel, but I think this movie's pretty bad overall.
Right, and then for the final introduction, Alec, we'll go to you. What were your thoughts?
I haven't seen it yet, because I am giving my money for Cocaine Bear. So all you guys talking trash, that's what I want to go see.
Damn straight.
I'm not like the biggest Ant-Man fan. I'm a big MCU fan, but I don't hate any of the movies. Like and Austin said that he hated Thor: Love and Thunder. I actually enjoy Love and Thunder just because I don't take these movies that seriously. I go in there, I have a good time, I have some fun, and so that's what it sounds like I would have with Ant-Man, but it sounds like I can also wait until it's on Disney Plus.
Absolutely. So I guess you'll sort of play the role of the audience tonight. If there's anything that anyone says at any point, just vouch in there and sort of ask for sort of more on it. Because again, at this point, if you're watching, we are going to be delving full into spoilers. Alec is aware of that. He's here despite that fact. He doesn't really care. So I did bring up a couple of points from the movie, stuff that I saw, discussion online, and I'm just going to kind of throw it out there and we can sort of pick it up and pass it around for a bit. And the first thing that I am going to start with that seemed to have the most internet chatter around it was, for reasons that I never understood personally, the recasting of Cassie Lang from Emma Furman, the actress who portrayed her in Avengers Endgame, to Catherine Newton in this film. And when I say I never understood it, I mean I never understood why there was such an uproar over it. From a personal standpoint, I do feel bad for the actress that she got cast in a role that she did not get to continue to play.
My big break! Oh, shit.
Like, I feel bad on a personal level, but at the end of the day, like, if you look up her filmography, she's a very untested actress. Her biggest role is the sixth billed supporting character in an Adam Sandler comedy from 8 years ago. And to explain that, she played one of the daughters in Blended, in case anybody doesn't know what I'm referencing.
It's a great movie.
I did not know that.
How dare you assume I don't know my Blended filmography?
She's a very untested actress overall, and there were just other parts to it. As far as it's been said publicly, because he has zero credit on the film, Peyton Reed had no involvement with Avengers Endgame, so I'd assume he was not a part of the casting of the character for that film. Also, Catherine, and again, you can say what you want about the way it turned out in the film, because I do agree it's one of the weaknesses with the movie. Catherine Newton does have experience working with CGI. She was in Pokemon, in which half that cast is not fucking real, so you're working off of nothing. Again, I don't think that translated perfectly here, unfortunately. So for me, and also she's been in a number of comedy films. I mean, a couple years ago, Freaky was one of the most successful films during like the pandemic year. And she was the star of that, playing both a high school girl and a murderer. So for me, the recasting always just made sense. I never understood why there was such an uproar over it. But there have been a lot of thoughts on her performance in the film because it was such a talking point. So I'll throw it out to whoever wants to take it first. What were your guys' thoughts on her in the film?
So
I didn't even know they redid it.
What'd you say?
Here's my... here's my thing with that. I didn't have an issue with them recasting the role. Like, if you want to recast it, get somebody else, fine. I mean, they've done that before. Maybe for different reasons, but they've recasted Rhodey. And Rhodey is a pretty important part to the Iron Man story, and looks like he's going to have a pretty important part of the MCU going forward. What I had an issue with was how they handled it. They didn't even tell her that they were going to move on. She found out on social media. That's where my issue was, where if you're going to recast, fine, whatever. Like, I'm sure she would have been okay. Maybe she would have been upset that, she had a pretty, potentially a big role in the MCU, and, now it's gone. But if they would have at least called her and said, hey, say no, we're going to be recasting the role of Cassie for Ant-Man 3. Thank you for what you did in Avengers Endgame. I would have been totally cool with that. But the fact that she's not the only actress or actor to find out that they were recast on social media, but the fact that she found that out, to me, I thought it was in pretty poor taste of Marvel. I think they should have at least gave her a call before it broke on the internet, or before they even casted Catherine Newton.
I think he's frozen up there for a sec. I would agree with him. It was handled in poor taste, but as he also said, it's not like that's the first time that it's happened. I'll throw it around. Does anybody have any thoughts, if there are any, on the recasting itself or her performance in the film? Is there anything that stood out as good or bad necessarily?
Yeah, I was
gonna say go JPO, and I'm gonna go after you.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't even know any of this backstory here. I totally didn't even piece together this was a different actress here. Because she's not in Endgame all that much here. That does suck. Like, she definitely could have been given a phone call. So that does suck in that respect. Yeah, that is kind of a drop ball by Marvel, because I kind of assumed like maybe they tested her. You know what I mean, with Paul Rudd in these bigger scenes, and they were like, listen, maybe she's just not totally, what we envisioned, because like you kind of said, Aaron, different director, different producer, but it sounds like here they just kind of went with probably a more known actress here. I mean, Blockers, Detective Pikachu, and Freaky, she's kind of a proven commodity to a degree, so it sounds like they just went with someone, okay, we got a bigger role this time now, let's go with a more known kind of set actress here. So it sucks that they at least could have called her. But as well as performance wise, she's good in the movie here. I definitely agree, though. Kind of that's why I was saying I wish we were maybe stayed in the real world, because I do feel they dropped the ball with, that's started as a big plot point, and it kind of gets lost because now we're in this universe and now we just got to go.
And it is worth noting, you said, obviously, you said director and producer. It is worth noting, in addition to the fact that Peyton Reed was not involved in Endgame, Ant-Man is also one of the franchises within the MCU that actually has a second producer in addition to Kevin Feige. I believe his name is Steven Broussard, who is specifically in charge of these films, and I don't know what his involvement would have been in Ant-Man. So you're right, there's theoretically two creatives that had no hand in casting the original actress.
Which it also goes with what Pez was saying before about how they treat the multiverse. Like, I think there's so many different hands that want to do their own thing. Because we've seen it recently with Star Wars, where it's like everyone's got their own ideas and their own casting ideas.
Yeah, Pez, up to you.
Yeah, I don't have really an issue with like the recasting. I mean, you get whatever actor is right for the role, what have you. It's the vast different characterization of Cassie from the first two films. In the first two films, you've got this very cute sort of father-daughter relationship. She's very loving, she's always kind of, she's very jovial and light. And boy, who doesn't love an angsty teen activist? Because that's just the most likable character you could possibly make her, is somebody who just immediately from the get-go in the movie is going, well, I don't care if you save the world, Dad, because there's homeless people in the world. Like, fuck off, okay? Fuck off. You don't know shit about shit. You're like 19 years old. You've never lived in the world, and I saved the fucking universe. Know your role and shut your mouth, as the great Dwayne Johnson would say.
That would have been a great turn in this movie. Paul Rudd was like, shut the fuck
up. The MCU finally used its F-bomb. No, what I'll say is, in terms of the script writing, I saw what they were going for, because they specifically referenced the homeless thing is kind of what they were doing in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The idea that, like, the Avengers saved the universe, but there's also if you actually thought about it realistically, there's a long list of issues that would occur with just bringing half the universe back into existence when people had moved on from them. And also the other part of it is, which I agree with you to an extent, that maybe they didn't explain the change in character enough in movie, but I also think of it from the perspective of, this is a character who, for all intents and purposes, lost probably the biggest guide in her life for 5 years, and again, like everybody else would assume they were dead, mentally had to move on. But I agree with you again, and it's all in the execution of the film. The fact that they're in the quantum realm in 10 minutes, like, I knew the movie was only 2 hours, but that even shocked me how quickly they jumped into it, because they
There's
didn't give
no
time to sort of explain
exploration
it.
of that relationship should be the thing in the middle of this movie, because it's everything. As soon as he pops back in Endgame, the first thing he does is goes to find Cassie. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally his only thought is, did she go too? Where is she? Oh my God. And when she finds her, it's a really emotional, like, cool moment. And then this movie, you could have really explored, hey, what's been going on since then? You know, this is our first chance to really jump into that. But no, we got to get to the I keep saying multiverse, but you know, like the fucking quantum, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we got to jump in there right now.
And
we can't waste any time. Like,
I think that plays into a larger issue that, honestly, in my opinion, the MCU has had since day one, and it's one of the problems with and I will say this, I think overall the MCU has succeeded in telling a large overarching story that expands multiple inner franchises and a long stretch of now film and television and specials and all this type of stuff. But the problem is, every once in a while you sort of have to sacrifice something within your universe in order to explain and expand the universe. And it goes as far back as Iron Man 2, a movie that was basically sacrificed for its own plot in order to expand and explain what the Avengers were ahead of the Avengers happening. This movie is that, but for the multiverse. This movie was sacrificed so that they could go into the quantum realm and introduce you to Kang and explain his backstory and explain how his multiversal travel works. And you're right, they did. I think this movie did a slightly better job than, like, comparing it to Iron Man 2 of keeping the foundations there, because like, even when they split the characters off, it is Scott and Cassie, and it is Hope with her parents, so that within the scenes you can get a little bit of character moments, at least moments together with those characters. But the actual making it the plot of the film, the way it was in the previous two Ant-Man films, again, you're right, it was absolutely sacrificed at the expense of building the universe.
There's also thing that bugs me in the universe now. Does everybody need to be a superhero?
Yes.
Yeah, everyone.
Yeah. Does everybody need an Iron Man suit or an Ant-Man suit?
Yeah.
Or fucking,
even in Wakanda forever. Hey, here's this girl. She's a superhero.
You might as well just make 8 billion Iron Man suits, hand them out, and let's all defend Earth from the cosmic fucking universe. Because apparently everybody
that was kind of Tony's idea.
I'm sorry, I know, but like, you are diminishing the value of a superhero when everybody
get Iron Man suit, and you get Iron Man suit, and you get Iron Man suit.
I'm gonna throw it to Matt, because I can hear him in the back trying to chime in. Without the visual, it's harder to see. And then Pop, I'll throw it to you just because you've been silent for the last little bit. I was gonna say I agree with what was up.
I wasn't say this is going to be an issue that I think it's going to happen in the MCU more and more.
As that's exactly what I was going to say.
It's just something that we're going to have to deal with.
If you think about the comics,
it's just what's going to happen.
There's an infinite number of heroes in the comics. There's an infinite number of people who are heroes in the comics. The more you continue to expand the universe, and the more you continue to go we have to mine in more characters and bring in. Inevitably it's going to be a part of it, right? And I in this film, I at least appreciate the fact that the way she becomes a hero is not Ant-Man's like, let's get the daughter in the family business. It's more like, I like the fact that everything that's happened is done behind his back. The fact that she is a grown woman at this point, she is just doing things of her own volition. He has no idea what she's doing anymore. And she becomes a superhero without his knowledge. She creates a suit for herself with Michael Douglas's help without his knowledge, and she only gets to use it in the film because of the situation they're in. It's like, if you have it, it'd be dumb not to. But it's one of those things where, like, I totally understand your point, and I think it is a valid criticism. I just think it's inevitably something that's going to happen. Black Panther, I think, is one of the more excessive ones, where it's like, okay, now we're giving, like, every Wakandan character that's ever had a prominent scene is now getting a costume, like specified. You're getting a costume.
Yeah.
And that's a little much. So Matt, I'll throw it to you, and then I'll throw it to Papa.
So I have kind of 2 points I want to get to, both revolve around Cassie. The first one, real quick, is when it comes to her getting the suit. I didn't have an issue with that because we're clearly getting young Avengers, and she's an important part to the team, I would assume. So, I mean, it would make sense that she would have her own suit, so that way she could, be ready for whenever they do Young Avengers. Fuck you, Jordan. Second,
he's helping you out.
He's being your avatar.
I was being you.
I appreciate
I'm your
it.
avatar.
Yeah.
I got made fun of so many times in elementary school, and I brought flashbacks. No, so really, that's the first point.
Fair.
The second point with Cassie is I had no issue with her being more of like an activist. Like, we got to help the homeless people, Dad, because for one, she's a 19-year-old kid. 19-year-olds are stupid, and two,
I can vouch,
that's
yes.
how every 19-year-old white girl is. Like, if you ever have met
Also, I'll
a
vouch.
19-year-old or 18-year-old or just a teenage white girl who's blonde, and you just meet them and you talk to them, this is exactly how they are. So I didn't have an issue with it just because that's how any 19-year-old girl at that position, besides maybe like a couple percent of them, would act. Whereas, like, well, Dad, we got to help these people. You're a hero. Why can't you do this, Dad? So I didn't have an issue with that.
I'm just saying, she can be an advocate without being an asshole.
She's 19. Though.
She's a 19.
Yeah, she's 19 though. She is an asshole.
Is every 19-year-old girl you come across act like that?
Majority of them.
It comes.
Majority. Yeah.
Look,
I'm gonna. My point is that the relationship is completely different. I understand she's like a late teen now, but you don't have to do that because she completely is it's a turn off. It's unlikable now. Like, I understand that, like, that's the direction you went. It doesn't mean I have to like that or find her likable at all.
Yeah, you don't have. I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm just saying, like, look, I work out of high school. This is exactly how every high school teenager, like, boy or girl, acts. They're idiots. They're assholes.
Their parents.
They think they're above a certain point. They think their parents, if they don't do one little thing, they're idiots. Plus, like Aaron said, her dad was gone for 5 years, so she probably formed this whole mindset too, where, like, she lost her dad and I believe her mom too, right? Didn't they both, I guess, vanish?
The mom's not dead, is she? I feel like they alluded the mom
I don't think
died.
she's dead.
Well,
I thought
so
she just
she's not,
went away.
So she's not dead in Quantumania. They do say that she's alive.
Okay.
They've never said in the MCU whether or not the mom, who played by Judy Greer, who of course is among the many that don't return for this film.
Bobby Cannavale, I missed everybody.
Yeah, so they never say whether her or Cannavale blipped away. But as far as I'm aware, the house that she's at in Endgame, I don't believe is the same house that they've shown previously. I don't believe it is the same house. Now that could just be
Feige
set shooting, but
right. And I thought Kevin Feige said that, like, because there was a whole article that came out with, the non-heroes, like, if they vanished or they were still around. I think she was. I could be wrong. I think she was one that also was blipped. I think her. I think Betty didn't blip, but I do think she blipped. So even if she didn't blip, she lost her dad, who she had a great relationship with. She lost her grandparents on her dad's side. So it makes sense that she's going to act out. Because, again, kids are dumb. They don't do things rationally. So she probably just formed that mindset. Like, I've met so many people just working out of high school these past 5 years.
Let's see that
are exactly
like on screen.
We don't need to. We don't need to. We don't need to.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely need to see that.
Why? Why do we need to?
All right, hold on. Opening argument, Pez, you get 2 minutes.
Okay, so before we erupt into an argument here, I feel like we've come to the impasse, at least, of what I can get at as to why Pez is more negative. And again, I agree with you. There's a lot of
because I don't think it's necessary. It's a 2-hour movie. We got a lot to tell. They're handling this movie like Iron Man 2. I don't
heard
want
the
to be
discussion.
boggled
My
down
vote
by
is for
things that
Papa.
ultimately
I
don't
think he
matter.
got the point. He made the best point.
Yeah, Papa.
Thank you,
But
Jake, yeah.
I don't think we need to have things that ultimately don't matter in the story. Like this is her relationship with her dad. As far as we understand, it's
If
still
it's
good.
going to be central to the fucking movie as it is, we need to see that shit. Yes.
Their relationship is established as they're good. She's a bad girl. She kind of, she
Bad
went to
girl.
jail like twice or
She's
whatever. She went to jail
she's
twice.
freaky. Get it? Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. But
That's a
yeah,
great
like
movie.
All right.
Okay, that
like it's
context makes it
established
weird,
that
but-
they have a good relationship. They're not like, oh, I hate you, Dad. Fine, Cassie. I guess you hate me. Like they still like each other. It's clear that she's not going to jail for robbing. She's going to jail because of the activism stuff that she's doing.
But don't forget,
That-
Paul
that-
Rudd went to jail for kind of a similar thing in the first one.
Yeah, for cat burglary or whatever.
Well, what he did
Whatever
for there's like a reason
It was a
behind
cool
why
crime.
reason. Yeah, he like got people's monies back in the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a cool crime.
Yeah.
All right, so Papa, I'll go to you just because, and then we'll move on to another element of the film. I'll go to you before we move on.
Yeah, I did kind of say earlier I did enjoy Cassie a little bit, especially her interactions with Paul Rudd. But I definitely see Pez's argument. And hey, maybe we could have gotten a Cassie spin-off series to
Oh
build.
God, no. God,
Yeah.
no. We got enough of those.
More
Jesus
Cassie.
Christ.
That's what Pez wants.
That's like when Sony wanted an Aunt May movie. Anybody remember that shit when they were going to set up that universe with the
Only
Amazing Spider-Man?
If her
But
job is
that's-
the same as the wrestler.
Yeah,
But that's
You want
also
Agent
why.
Ant-Man?
yeah.
But that's also why we go from Endgame to now she's full blown activist, stuff like that. Because there is that time jump, and they're not going to delve out this story of one minor character for all these years.
Right.
It's just going to be, hey, this movie takes place a couple years. I don't know exactly how many years after
So
Endgame.
if I'm correct, it's the timeline of these films. The way that it basically works is, I believe it's so Ant-Man is 2015. Civil War is about a year later. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is, I think they say it's 18 months after Civil War because that's how long his probation was, and you're right at the end of it. Then he's gone for 5 years, which is when he comes back in Endgame, and then I believe this film's about 2 years after that. So, because mathematically
like
she still
mathy.
would have been like a high school student when he came back, but now at this point she is an adult. So,
And is it ever said that she's 19? Or y'all just saying
I
19?
think that's just the rough assumption of math.
Okay.
If you knew how old she would have
She
been.
doesn't
Yeah, I
seem like
think
she's
it's
in
just
high school.
assumed.
She seems like she's beyond high school at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not clearly not too old though.
Right.
And she can't
Yeah.
be Catherine
Probably
Newton's
flunked
age
out,
because
let's
Catherine
be
Newton's
honest.
like 26 or 27. She can't be that old mathematically. So
Is she really?
She's 26.
yeah, she's like mid to late 20s. She's not that
How
young.
about
Mhm.
Hey,
that's too quickly? He Googled
hey,
it,
hold on, guys.
obviously.
Hold on.
100%
I
young.
must say this real quick. I must say this real quick.
Just make sure it's
Catherine
not
Newton,
creepy
if
that
you are
she's
listening
hot.
to
All
the
right, not
show-
creepy that she's hot.
Nope.
Look,
You're clear,
guys,
you're clear,
hold on,
buddy.
hold on. I got to say this real quick.
Okay, Matt needs
Catherine
another
Newton, if you
12
are
minutes.
listening
Let's
to
give
the
him
show, get a hold of me, Catherine Newton. Just get a hold of me.
Matt, you got
I'll
two
send you my-
channels.
That's
Two
why you're
channels.
defending the character.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
defending,
No.
you're defending Catherine Newton.
No,
Ironically,
Trust
Captain
me,
Newton's gonna hit
I-
Pez and be like, "I like your honesty."
look,
Yeah.
look, no, trust me. I look, Anya Taylor-Joy. She's my, or not Anya. Well, both. Ana de Armas. She's my wife, but I'm
All
not
the
going to
Anas.
defend her for blonde.
Anna Kendrick, Anna Armas.
All right, I don't.
Oh,
I don't
Damn.
All of them. Anyway, yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to someone that
Ant-Man,
I don't
guys.
think anyone's gonna marry. Let's talk about a different
No holes
aspect
alien.
of the film.
Me?
That was also a very
Oh,
50-50 split. Let's dive
No
into
holes alien?
MODOK.
Oh, okay. And then no holes.
Yeah,
I'd marry Modoc.
that's my
And then,
husband.
yeah. So let's dive into MODOK. So obviously, MODOK is a character that is brought in from the comics. In the comics, he's in terms of personality, I believe they've tried to keep it as similar as they can. My only exposure to the character was I watched the Patton Oswalt show, and it did feel sort of similar to that at
It
times.
did.
But in the comics, he's a completely separate character. He is a supervillain for, I want to say, like Captain America, I think is who he's like
Yeah, 'cause
mainly
he's with
known
AIM.
for.
I think.
And so, but in the movie, building off of the original Ant-Man, and again, it does actually make sense. When Yellow Jacket is killed, his body shrinks first to an excessive degree, and then he shrinks into the quantum realm. So that is who MODOK is. We get to see the return of Corey Stoll as Darren Cross, aka Yellow Jacket, aka MODOK. And in this film, MODOK is motivated by a lack of purpose. And I guess now that they're in front of him, a want for revenge, although I don't know how obsessive that would have been prior, because they weren't there. This has been one of the most controversial elements of the film, simply because it's probably the goofiest that the film gets. They kind of just let Corey Stoll go full reign with this character. Like, there's nothing holding him back from this performance.
He never supposed to go full.
You don't go full MODOK.
Yeah, never go full MODOK. And he did. He went full MODOK. Outside of, and I'll jump into it. I'll start outside of just the, and again, it's a consistent issue with everything in this film. You don't get time to breathe with any of the decisions this movie makes because it is moving at such a fast pace. Outside of the literal switch from him being villain hero, throwing himself at Kang to try and help, I enjoyed what they did with the character. I always liked Corey Stoll in the first film, but I thought the writing made him one of the weakest elements because he doesn't ever get to be a character. He just very quickly becomes this psycho, deranged, like deluded person. And then Yellow Jacket is just another version of Ant-Man. There's nothing cool or unique about him as a character in the suit. But I think Stoll's a great actor, and you probably could have done this more seriously, and maybe it could have been better. But I did enjoy the fact that he just went off the rails. I mean, literally, last time we saw him, he was blowing Thomas the Tank Engine off the rails. I like the fact that he followed suit and just went insane with it. I thought a lot of the jokes worked with him because, again, he has chemistry with a lot of these actors. He's worked with them already once, and I thought that he did a great job at that. I liked it. It worked for me, but I totally get why it's divisive. Austin, you made a physical movement when I said I liked it, so I'll go to you first before we throw it open.
You could cut this character out of the movie and it would make zero difference to the movie whatsoever. So
you can cut most of the characters out of it.
The character doesn't even need to be in the movie, period. You can cut him out because he's a fucking clown anyways. Kang, half the time, is just like, shut the fuck up and just, like, bitch slaps him like all over the place. Like, who gives a shit? And like when he opens up the mask thing, like if you wanted to have him in the movie and you just had Corey Stoll's voice and didn't even know if it was him, it was just him doing the voice, which would have been fine. But like the mask thing, like, didn't look horrible. That actually looked pretty close to the actual comics. But like, my God, the first time you see that. And it looks like when you used to have DVDs that were full screen and you try to stretch it to widescreen, that's what it looks like. And it looks like shit. And you look at that and you go, is this a fucking Asylum movie? Like, this is a $200 million movie on the screen right now? Like, what am I looking at? No wonder there were 6 special effects houses working on this movie, and like nobody knew what the hell they were doing or what they were going for.
Crunch bait.
Like, somebody saw this and said, "That's okay. We should leave that in the movie because it's easily the worst special effect that's ever been in the history of the MCU." And then you have just the actual character itself, in addition to being a fucking clown, like. He, in addition to being unnecessary, the payoff, quote unquote, is that Cassie has a fight with him and just tells him, "Hey, don't be a dick." Oh shit, never thought about that before. Fuck off. MODOK sucks.
But I feel like
blows.
Well, I was gonna say, I'll throw it to you next, Matt. I feel like that's in line with the character though, because in the first film, again, very quickly, because of whatever he's doing to himself as a part of the experiments, he just sort of becomes deranged, and it's like every little thing sort of just throws him off. And I feel like that's actually really weirdly in character. He's been surrounded by bad guys for the last few years. Nobody's told him, "Hey, be a good guy." So he's like, "Yeah, fuck it, I'll try that. I'm not happy doing this." Like, you're right. The character doesn't need to be in here, but I would argue that, and it gets down to positive necessarily, most of the cast doesn't need to be here. You could cut the freedom fighter element.
Yeah.
You don't need that in the film at all. All those characters could go.
All the
to
signs of a great
even
movie. Then you could cut out most of the characters and
I have a
the
question.
up,
movie
Alex?
exists. Yeah, always the sign of a great movie that you could cut out.
Alex,
90%
yes,
of that.
how can we help you?
Thank you. Yeah. So what Pez just said about how like everything ends with MODOK, if that's the case, that makes me not like the character because his entire name is mental organism designed only for killing. So why am I supposed to believe that this mental organism that's designed only for killing?
That's also him that
don't do
calls
that.
himself
You're like,
that, I think.
yeah.
You know
so
the
really,
character at all?
in the
Mechanical.
film. In the film, I think it's explained away that he just calls himself that because it sounds
Yeah,
cool. He's
sounds
not like a completely
makes me not like it.
re-engineered human being.
I would say
It's,
we didn't see it. 'cause, like,
your instinct is correct, Alex. It's a stupid fucking.
He's supposed to
character.
be like an evil maniacal like being
He
that like
tries to be, but it's a complete clown show. Like he just
claims
flies
to be
around
that,
like
exactly.
a balloon,
It's
and
a
like,
fun clown.
and that's
show.
why I like it.
and apparently he's been doing this for how long? 30 years,
Yeah,
ever since
wow.
he got sucked, or whatever the fuck the time.
God,
By the way, that's another issue I have with this movie. They use the time dilation.
8
in the
years.
they use the time
Yeah.
dilation in the quantum realm whenever it's fucking convenient for the plot, because some people are just living like normally, like day to day, but then all of a sudden the ants got sucked somewhere where they live 1,000 years in a day. So whenever it's convenient to the plot, we decide to use that aspect of the quantum realm. So
Go
which
ahead,
is
Matt.
another
I-
inconsistency.
we need rules.
I
and
think with the
Yeah.
I agree.
I
there.
think with the ants.
Sorry.
So I think with the ants, I think the reason why it says thousands of years, they don't age like people. That's their explanation. Kind of like, oh, it feels like 1,000 years for ants, but in
Time to
reality,
fact
it's
check
not.
that real quick. I'm just gonna do a quick
But-
little Google.
Don't
I'm just
fact
saying,
check things
if
the
it's like
scriptwriters didn't.
dogs,
they don't have a long
if it's
life.
like dogs, then I mean, dogs are 7 when they're actually 1. If we're gonna go by our age, so that's my only thing. Maybe in that movie, or maybe in real life, I don't know how ants age. I don't
year.
know about ants.
They live for
But-
a year.
But because they age differently than people. Maybe that's why I said thousands of years. Plus, they're like, I don't know, they're super advanced. So I will say first, I disagree with MODOK being the worst CGI in a Marvel movie because those rhinos in the first Black Panther were pretty
I
ridiculous.
will say the fight
Absolute
scene at the end of
love
Black
and
Panther, the PlayStation 2 cutscene is pretty bad at the end of that movie.
Yeah.
I was
The
gonna
fights
say,
between two
I
Black
think
Panthers pretty bad.
collectively,
I will
Black
raise you with
Panther
that.
probably has.
Yeah.
Collectively,
Yeah.
Black Panther probably has the worst
But-
example of
Yeah.
CGI. Some of that stuff's horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, Aaron, I'll disagree with you.
Okay.
I want MODOK to be my husband. Have you seen him? He's very thick. They showed that in the movie. That is daddy. He's a daddy.
Dick with
MODOK.
2
I'm more
C's.
of a majors guy myself, but all right.
So but my whole thing, I
Okay,
was
so
cool
we're all
with
gonna
MODOK.
fuck somebody
I
from this
wanted a
film
weird-
established. Let's.
Yes, MODOK.
I'll
and
fuck
Cassie.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Cassie's
She still looks
nicer.
good.
Yeah, true.
We'll take Jonathan
Michelle
Majors.
Pfeiffer too. Man, I wish I was Bill Murray, but
Oh God,
anyway.
no, you don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There you go. That's my
Anyway,
pick, Bill Murray. 'Cause that's a story right there.
Yeah.
But I liked MODOK though. I liked him. He to me, I expected a goofy because MODOK's weird, right? Like he's a weird dude. Like there's some stuff with the comics and shows that he's been in where he's more serious, but he's a giant head. That he's a giant head. He's weird. I expected him to be weird in the MCU. I'm not expecting him to be a more serious thing. So I was fine with him. I was cool. I thought Corey Stoll did a really good job playing the character. I think he fit. I will agree with you. The don't be a dick, thing was just not good. That was like my main thing I didn't like. Although, at the end of the movie where he's like, now I'm an Avenger. I thought, okay, that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But like, I
You're
will
always like a
agree,
brother
I
to
thought-
me. Yeah.
That was the line
Sure.
that killed me. Was that you're
Yeah.
always you're like a brother to me. It's just like what?
He rubs his hand on Paul Rudd's head. But I agree with the don't be a dick thing was bad. But I liked MODOK in this movie. I enjoyed him. He was fun. I thought it was funny that they were like, oh yeah, it's an acronym, MODOK. But I don't know. I didn't have an issue with the character. Yeah, you could have got rid of him in the movie, and you pretty much would have had the same film. But he's in the movie. Whatever. I enjoyed him.
The way that I sort of equated it in my mind was like, because I see where you're coming from, Austin, with specifically the point you made about like half the movie Kang's just kind of throwing him away. Like it's like, why would you keep this guy around if that's how you treat him? To me, that's like they kind of did the same thing with Thanos, where Thanos had Loki, and then he also had that other guy played by Alexis Denisof, and he didn't really treat either of them with respect. In fact, he killed the other guy in Guardians of the Galaxy. But the thing is, you just didn't get a lot of screen time, right? Like Loki was a minion of Thanos, and I'm sure he probably annoyed the hell out of him. But you never really saw them on screen together, and vice versa with the other guy.
But see, MODOK in this movie felt like, like Sam Jackson and Leo DiCaprio's dynamic in Django Unchained, when like Leo's sitting at the dinner table and Sam Jackson just is like standing by his shoulder. Every time Leo says something, he's just like, "Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what you mean. Yeah, no, you don't mess with that." Like that's what that felt like. It's like Kang would not put up with that fucking nonsense. Like he would be like, "Shut the fuck up and get out of here.
Everybody
Go do something else." Like he doesn't feel like he would put up with that shit in this movie. Like he's all about business, and this dude is just like his parrot on his fucking shoulder. It doesn't even match the actual character. Like it's just weird. Like that one scene they actually have together, it's just a strange dynamic. Like I don't understand. Like it just doesn't mesh with the rest of the movie.
You need minions. He doesn't have a big pool to choose from. He's got MODOK to do his little bitch work.
Yeah, say MODOK.
Well, he could be off doing his bitch work instead of right next to him being the parrot on his shoulder. Like it's just weird.
Well, to be fair, he is the one that captures Rudd. He successfully captures Ant-Man. And he does almost kill Cassie till she tells him not to be a dick, and then he goes, "Yeah, okay, sure."
Cassie, who in one scene had no idea who to use her powers, and then immediately beats MODOK with her powers. But all right, that's fine.
Well, they've always done that. Even Yellowjack in the first movie, like
at that point, if you nitpick a movie, sure, but that's I'm
like one piece of advice.
She has moments. She has moments in earlier scenes before that where she's in the hallway, where she's clearly still trying to figure it out and has successful moments. No, I'm not going to write that one. I don't agree with you there. I think that they showed throughout the film she had a very basic, if inconsistent, mastery of the power, and in that moment it helped her. But that's called a script contrivance because you need it in film.
Also, how many movies do we see where what they need is to be in the moment to actually figure out their their ability? Like it happens all the time, and especially in superhero movies.
Even Ant-Man in general has always been a movie where it's like, exactly how does it work? Sometimes he's light, sometimes he has the power of this, sometimes like how's the keychain work? I don't know. Like there's a lot of little things you kind of nitpick. From the first
so before we move on from the MODOK discussion, JPO, Papa, you guys have been the two more quiet ones. Any thoughts before we move on?
I liked MODOK. It's not exactly, kind of like the movie in general. It's not exactly what I wanted, but for what I got, I'm fine with it, man. He is kind of, especially in I think in a movie, in any movie, he would be a B character. MODOK's never, I think, going to be your Thanos, your King. He's going to be a B villain. You know what I mean? And that's what they use him here. Yeah, you could argue cut him out, but I enjoyed him when he was there. So I wouldn't say cut him out. He's a fun little B character to kind of move shit along and be a little more comical. I don't know if it totally matches the character we see in the first movie, because he is pretty kind of bad. Like he murders that dude in the bathroom without giving a shit. But, over time, and just to make it more comical, I thought Corso did good. It is a jarring visual at first. My niece refers to him as the Eggman. Whenever she talk about that character, she's like, "What was the Eggman?" And I was like, yeah, it's MODOK. And but yeah, overall, like I said, I had some laughs with him. He was fine. I'm just glad in a weird way. Like I never necessarily thought we'd see MODOK on the big screen. So I'm just glad we got it. And I think it is in the vein of that Patton Oswalt show of even in that show, he battles between I want to rule the world and kill everything, but I kind of really don't want to kill everything. I just kind of want to be liked.
You're right. That's what I said. It does feel, and again, I don't know if the show itself is true to the comics or not. I'm not that familiar.
At this point, you can pick from everything, man. There's so many different versions of every character that
it did feel a lot like Patton Oswalt's portrayal in the show, and that element specifically is it's in the show. Scene to scene at times, he is bouncing between this want to be seen as this serious evil dude, but also I'll be a good guy if it means I'll get liked. And I'd certainly say the don't be a dick thing, which is probably the weakest element of the character. There is something that it stems from. It doesn't just. I
even chuckled at that because I was like, all right, that kind of does fit the character to me. It was him oh, you think I'm a dick?
If anything,
that actually hurts him.
If anything, that moment for me is more negative on the character of Cassie, only because they spent the whole movie trying to show that she is she's not a little kid anymore. She is a more mature version of the character, but that feels like the advice a 10-year-old would pull out. And then Papa, final thoughts before we move on to another part of the film.
Yeah, overall, I did really enjoy MODOK. Like I said earlier, I did have a couple problems with them. Definitely the ending that was mentioned, the "don't be a dick," and just that flip turn. It really didn't make any sense. There was a lot that they could have done to make that switch happen. And then, of course, the visual. Like I said, I find it very similar to Peter Cushing in Rogue One. One of the best scenes is whenever you see his reflection in the window. And so you can see like the bad CGI, but it's a reflection. It's not actually him. And that was amazing. And then they start showing this weird random face that completely threw me out of Rogue One. I found that very similar here with MODOK. I think do the one reveal whenever he first sees Ant-Man again, and then have him in the mask the rest of the time would have been great. And I really thought it was weird. Like last time we've seen Darren Cross, he's a very bad guy. Everything he does in Ant-Man. And now he's a killing machine. And as soon as he sees Ant-Man, he's like, "Hey, it's my buddy. I've always thought you as a brother." And one thing I really think that they could have done is you have MODOK, the android, coming up, getting ready to kill Ant-Man or whatever he's about to do. And then instead of having those weird flashbacks to where the audience gets that it's Yellow Jacket, just have him throw up the mask. Paul just starts looking at him and is like, "Wait, Darren, is that you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I made it to, I'm in the quantum realm or whatever. I'm MODOK." And just like a little brief of, I don't hate you because now that I'm here, I'm like a king. People love me here. Something like that to explain why he's like really trying to be buddy with Ant-Man after the last time we saw him wanted to kill him.
Right. I will say that was like a standout, like, what are we doing with the, like, you're 2 seconds away from pulling the mask up. Why do we need flashback visuals to the first film to, like, he's not, as soon as you see the face, like, if you have a half decent memory, you're going to know who it is, or it plays into the joke that the movie's running with, where it takes them a second to be like, "Fucking Darren? Really? Okay."
And like, it's been a while.
I don't mind being spoon-fed.
It's been a while since I've seen Ant-Man, so I didn't realize like if there was something he said that was a flashback that is supposed to remind audience of what's going on. But
I don't believe so.
Yeah, just the random start seeing flashbacks of, oh hey, this is the bad guy from Ant-Man 1. That I thought that would have been a lot better had it just been reveal the mask. Darren?
So another talking point to sort of move on, which is one that was brought up earlier, which I do think is a great talking point, more so about the film itself and its connection to the MCU, is the use of the multiverse. Because more than one person kind of brought it up earlier, and I 100% agree that it's a weakness with the MCU at this point. So far, we have seen, in terms of deep exploration, we have seen the multiverse show up in Loki, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and now Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I don't think I'm forgetting one. I think that's all of them. In terms of, and I guess What If as well, theoretically. So we've had 5 major appearances from the concept of the multiverse, and in each and every one of them, there has been a disconnect in terms of how they're using the multiverse, how they're explaining the multiverse. And I think that the further and further we go, this is going to hurt them more and more, because I understand, like, anytime I talk to a comic fan about this, their answer is, well, it's the multiverse, anything can happen. But I think when you're translating it into a medium where people who haven't read years and years of comics are having to try and understand it, I think you need to lay some ground rules and you need to work it out a bit more. And what's even more confusing is the way in which the multiverse is coming into it and who's in charge of it. Because, like, Michael Waldron was the lead writer on Loki season 1, and he wrote Doctor Strange, and those handle it 2 different ways. And with this film, Jeff Loveness was brought in because he worked with Michael Waldron on Rick and Morty, and he's now written it and explained it a different way from those films. And even the 2 projects with Kang, Loki and this one, kind of explain it differently and go about it, addressing it in a different way. And I think it is creating a problem where the multiverse is not really understood, and we're theoretically reaching the halfway point considering how many projects we have left that'll address it before Kang Dynasty. We're at about the halfway point of where we should be understanding the multiverse, and I don't think they've done a good job at explaining what it is. So just if anyone has any thoughts to throw in there about this film's contribution to that and how it's sort of been handled.
So with this movie, kind of like I look at it similar with like No Way Home. It's not really much of a multiverse like connection as far as explaining what the multiverse is, because it's a quantum realm. You know, like that's where they're mostly at. The only multiverse thing would be Kang. That's pretty much it. And you know, No Way Home, you had obviously all the villains to Spider-Man. They appeared because of the spell, and that cracked into the multiverse a little bit. But I think the definitive, you know, I guess definition of what the multiverse is going to be in the MCU, I think that's going to be explained in Kang Dynasty. I think because like with Doctor Strange, he doesn't really have an understanding of what the multiverse is right now. It's just, you know, his basic idea is like, oh, it's different universes, you know, and all that good stuff. So that's, you know, we got a little taste of it there. And then obviously with Spider-Man, it's just the heroes pop up. We didn't go into their universe. We're still in the main MCU. And then Loki, yeah, it's a little different, I feel, with Loki, but I really think we're going to get the actual like definition of the multiverse in the MCU when Kang Dynasty appears. Because, like I said, the Marvels, that's going to dive a little bit into the multiverse, but I don't think it's going to dive into it enough to where it's going to be like a definitive version. It's going to probably be similar to like No Way Home as far as how they handle it there.
And so, because
Agatha.
I understand what you're saying, and I guess my concern with that personally, just from a viewer's perspective, and also thinking of it of like the mind of a critic type thing, is explain it. Like because the problem is I feel like that is too much to try and explain in the Kang Dynasty when, because for all intents and purposes, Kang Dynasty is going to be our Infinity War, and it's almost the equivalent of like in Infinity War. We're introducing the plot of the film, but also we have to explain how do characters traverse the universe. You know what I mean? Like we've already established that by that point that there was a cosmic marvel and how all of this can connect. Whereas we're just using the multiverse to do cool things at this point, but they're not really explaining any of it as we go. And I think that is becoming a bit of an issue because I think people are just like, I think the films are going to have a harder and harder time connecting with people if they don't really understand what's going on or the rhyme or reason as to why we, you know, do things. You know what I mean? Because like Doctor Strange for me was the worst of them when they went to that universe. Like, sure, it created a room full of cool cameos, but we have a universe in which Wanda is Wanda, but not the Scarlet Witch, but her kids are real. And Vision's nowhere to be found. And then we also have a Doctor Strange who was a Doctor Strange who was sort of more evil than a Doctor Strange. And we have a Mr. Fantastic, but there's no semblance of a Mr. Fantastic yet in the main universe. And we have a Mordo who's actually a good guy who's not corrupted. And then we have a Professor X who is Patrick Stewart, but it's not the Professor X from the films. And we have a Maria Rambo. You know what I mean? And it's like, there's and if anyone else has any thoughts, if anyone else has any thoughts, cut me off. But like, I just feel like it's being used to do cool shit. But the further you go into it and the less you explain it, the harder it is to sort of keep track of what it's for.
I've almost sadly
I think
given up. Like I'm almost just to the point where I'm like,
and that's exactly like I think that should be a concern. I think that should be a concern for them.
Yeah. I hate saying that, but I'm almost just to the point where I'm like, let's see what this movie says. Let's see what this TV show says, and like just kind of go with it, which is not a great thing.
Because like I feel like if you look at the Infinity Saga as an overarching story, they did build that well. Like I think by the time you reach Infinity War, you know all the pieces, you know why we're here, and now we can just enjoy the story. I don't want to get into the Kang Dynasty and still have no real understanding of how the multiverse works, why it works the way it does, what is an incursion, which they introduce and then don't really like. They do say what it is, but they don't fully explain what causes it. I mean, like they end Doctor Strange with a cliffhanger of your universe is going to be a part of an incursion. And at this point, it's looking like they're not going to resolve that until Kang Dynasty. Like, I just think that's way too much to try and put into one film.
With Doctor Strange, I think they're actually doing the third one. I don't know if it's going to be between Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, but apparently they haven't officially announced it, but apparently it's added to their release schedule. And there's things being delayed, so it's not gonna. They're not just cramming it in. Like Secret Wars is being delayed, and Deadpool is delayed, and I believe Kang Dynasty was too. But I think when it comes to actually explaining what the multiverse is to the audience, that's, I think, going to be explained more with Loki season 2. I think that's going to be the show that is going to really explain it to those that aren't really understanding it quite yet. Because to me, I haven't read the comics, but I pretty much understand how the multiverse works. It's a bunch of different universes where, like, there's little changes between people. Like, let's say there's a different universe with you, Aaron, and let's say you're an NFL quarterback, right? And then let's say there's another where you're you own a business. Yeah. Your needs are like perfect in that universe.
Perfect.
But like that's the basic understanding of what the multiverse is, as far not just with Marvel but everywhere. It's like there's all these different universes.
Right.
Each universe, people are a little different. I think when you get to Loki season 2, it's going to be explained more as far as how it's going to affect all the movies and how it's going to connect with Kang Dynasty.
But here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that. The movies don't give a fuck what the TV shows do. Because we already saw that. We already saw that when people went and saw Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, expecting there to be a payoff to WandaVision, and they gave it 2 lines of dialogue, and Vision didn't even make an appearance. And people were left going, well, what was the point of that then? Because all they did, basically, in a nutshell, was they had that little conversation where she's like, yeah, basically I was going through a phase, and it got weird. And, like, that was the end of it. So you didn't even have to watch WandaVision. It was a complete waste of time.
And if anything,
you kind of had to. I mean,
you could explain that she was depressed and mad based on Vision dying, and you could have rolled with that going into Doctor Strange.
You could have,
yes,
but
you could have.
When I went to go see it, and I saw it with my mom, my dad, I think my brothers and sisters. I don't know if both brothers went or just one. My mom didn't watch WandaVision. She didn't know why Wanda was like that. She didn't know how it all built up. WandaVision explains that, she's trying to get her kids. That's her main thing. She wants her children.
And obviously this
you kind of have to.
I don't want to go fully into it because we're talking about a different film. This to me is a writing issue in general. And personally, I don't like the fact that Michael Waldron's continuing to write within the MCU because I think the writing for Loki, the overall structure of the show I thought was weak, and I thought Doctor Strange had a weak script. They do explain in the film why she's acting the way she's acting. They explain it as she's possessed by the Darkhold, which completely goes against the ending of WandaVision. I not only think that you don't have to watch it, but I think that it goes against it because the show ends and she's
reading the Darkhold.
She's reading the Darkhold at the end of WandaVision, and she's reading it while in her astral projection form, which
exactly.
Her hands start to turn black like at the end of WandaVision 2?
Yeah.
Which is
like when she's reading it, it started to turn black.
Right. To me, the Wanda thing is the most easiest. Like that was something that I completely understood. Everyone complains about Wanda, like that doesn't make sense. It makes complete sense because WandaVision is a origin story for the Scarlet Witch. It introduces how she got there and everything. Like that's the one thing I don't have a problem with. There's so much more I have a problem with in that movie, and it's not Wanda.
All right, so that could be a different discussion. I don't want to completely dive into a Doctor Strange review now, but.
Yeah. But my point was, I think Loki season 2, that's going to be the season and the show.
But my point is that you can't rely on people watching 5 shows in between movies. We're not going to do that. So you have to tie these in with just the movies. You can't rely on some TV season.
That's why they're cutting down everything.
You can't.
Well, I was going to say,
they're going to explain it more.
I think Marvel is starting to retroactively. I think Marvel is starting to retroactively see where the issue is with that. And that's why, because again, none of this is confirmed, but I don't think your point is that far off, Matt, about Shay Peck maybe having something to do behind it. Because Shay Peck was big on pushing Disney Plus and like making things happen for that streaming service. And I think we certainly have seen a slowdown of shows. First off, we've seen a slowdown of greenlighting shows. I mean, there have been a handful of shows that like were greenlit under Chapek, and towards the end of his time, now into Iger taking over again, like seasons of shows that were filmed, if anyone's not aware, are just being dumped on Disney Plus all in one day, and then they're canceling the show quietly a couple of weeks afterwards. And it's not for Marvel shows or Star Wars shows, it's the other content that they have on the service that they're getting rid of. So certainly I think there's a pullback, but I think what they've realized, and it's 100% true, is you can't drop 5 shows in a year that are all 6 to 9 episodes and expect every single person to watch it, and also make the shows strictly within the continuity of the show. So in that context, I have an issue with Loki being the thing that explains the multiverse properly. Now, if it's true that we're only getting 2 shows this year now instead of the 5 they'd originally slated, and they're pushing everything else out, and they're spreading their schedule out more so that you don't have the over-reliance on getting 4 movies a year and 5 shows a year, and you have to watch all of it to stay up on it, maybe I can accept it a bit more. But I also, I personally think that, and I've said this from day one, the shows should be handled in a way where they are good for the character's journey, but you should be able to go into the movies and not have to have seen them, right? And I think the best example of that is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You can go into Captain America 4, and outside of 1 or 2 minor plot points, like Emily Van Camp being a villain now, I think you can probably watch Captain America 4 and not miss a beat from Captain America or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But if you've seen it, the character journey makes it hits a lot more for you. But at the end of the day, I think that show ends exactly where it ends, with Falcon holding the shield, right? So yeah, I see both sides of what you're saying, because I feel like yourself and Pez are the two that are most opposite of each other in terms of how you're viewing the MCU as a whole in the future. And I would say I see both sides of it, certainly. I think there is an element of wait and see, but I also think there's a lot to be concerned about.
Yeah, and my thing with Loki, and also I think it's going to be explained more in Kang Dynasty. That way, if you don't watch Loki season 2, I think they're going to explain it in Kang Dynasty with a little more detail as far as how the multiverse is going to work in the MCU, how it's all going to connect. But I think if you watch Loki season 2, that's where you're going to start to get an idea. But when Kang Dynasty comes out, or if there's something else that comes out before Kang Dynasty that explains it that we're just not thinking of, I think they're going to explain what was in Loki season 2 as far as how it works, but it's going to be in a little more detail. That way, they'll make it a little more simple to understand. Because like I said, I think it's pretty, I can understand where they're going with the multiverse, how it's going to work. But, I think they're going to explain it in a little more detail when the movie comes out. Not take a lot of time to explain it, but they're going to find a way where in like 5 minutes at most, you're going to understand this is how the multiverse works. And then once Secret Wars is done, that's when it's going to end the multiverse. And then we're going to go into X-Men or whatever else they do.
All right. So at this point, I would say, I was going to say, well, Pop, I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
Okay. So I definitely agree with Pez where when Disney Plus first came out, they were announcing shows left and right, and that really backfired. And so I see why they're taking that step back. But I think, especially with that end credit scene being Loki, I definitely understand what Matt's saying of Loki 2 is going to be very, very important in this world. And by them putting that end credit scene in there, it shows, hey, we realize the TV shows haven't really paid off, but this is one that you need to watch. This is one that you need to pay attention to, because to my knowledge, this is the first time we've seen an end credit scene be a scene from a TV show. We've seen several scenes from other movies, but never a TV show until
the only other, I believe the only other end credit scene in the MCU that directly addresses the show was the end credits for Black Widow, was a direct setup for Yelena's role going into Hawkeye, but obviously that was an original scene. This was very clearly a scene they've pulled from an episode of Loki and just put at the end of the film.
Yeah. And that's like, hey, there's this TV show out there. You should watch it because you're going to understand not only this character a little bit more, but also whenever we come out with Loki 2, it's going to be very vital. Everything else, you don't have to watch She-Hulk twerk. Nobody needs to see it. But
at the same time, when Kang Dynasty comes around, you better find a way to explain it for the people who didn't watch any of the TV shows, because there are definitely way more people that don't watch them than do watch them who do watch
That's
the
true.
movies.
Yeah.
It's not even close. You look at the
That's
box
true.
office and you can look at the people who subscribe to Disney Plus. It's a fraction. It's not even close. There are people who
Yeah.
absolutely only watch the movies who don't watch television shows. That's just a fact. So you better have a damn good way to condense whatever you do in that into some kind of scene or montage or dialogue dump or whatever it is, to have a definitive explanation of how this multiverse works, because like I said at the beginning of the show,
I agree.
not a single one of these properties are on the same page as far as how it works. Every single movie has used it in whatever way works for the plot.
Right.
Yeah, I agree
And
that they're going to have to explain it, because
Yeah.
like
What were you
I'll
gonna say,
tell you now,
Alex?
my brother's not going to watch the shows, so
I was gonna say
he's going to go
multiverse
see the
stuff
movie.
is great.
I'm not going to watch the shows. I don't. I've watched like 2 of them and I tapped out. I'm done.
I was gonna say multiverse.
I
stuff
love
is hard to
Loki.
do, man.
I'll
Like,
say that Loki.
it's not easy. It's the reason why I think a lot of people, there's not a lot of stories about the multiverse that are very successful. If you want to see one that does work, watch Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
But
Well,
other than that, it's really hard.
I'll say there's a reason why stuff like Flashpoint that they're going to do, it takes a simpler approach to where it's one character shifting around in one story where he's the same, shifting through all these things that are surrounding him, but like he's bouncing in and out or whatever. But again, it's only going to be like this one-off thing, and in the comics, it's just him. It's not like you then jump to Batman and Batman's doing his own multiverse adventure. Like it's just Flash. So like it's just going to be him bouncing in and out of these alternate universe, which is fine. I mean, Star Trek did shit like that. You know, like Star Trek, the Parallels episode with Worf did that in TNG, where he was still the same Worf shifting from parallel universe to parallel universe. You can do that, and it makes sense because he's not changing, but the world around him is. But once you start changing the person you're following as well, and to me, there's another aspect of this that we'll talk about if we talk about the end credit scene to this movie. If we get there, the Kang end credit scene, which I'm sure is probably on your docket, Aaron, we'll talk about that. But yeah, there's an issue I have with how the multiverse affects the stakes of these movies that I'm sure we'll get to.
So what I was going to say is, because we're at about an hour and a half, I do want to get at least one other topic in before we close out. So I was just going to say, I'll go around and I'll start with Papa and I'll kind of move it around. If you guys just have any brief final thoughts or any comments you didn't get to make, because I feel like at this point we've covered, with the exception of the end credit scene, which if you want to bring that up briefly, Pez, that's fine. We've covered every aspect of the film, I think, as much as we can, because at the end of the day, I think no matter whether you're on the more negative end like Pez, the more positive end like myself, or somewhere in between, this movie is not very deep. There's not really a lot going on to analyze. I think the fact that we've got this far in is pretty good for ourselves. So, Pop, I'll start with you with any brief final thoughts you have.
Yeah, you could definitely cut out half these characters, especially that weird goo creature who just really liked Hold. I could have done with
that. Felt like some studio reshoot shit that they ordered to put more comedy in the movie, and even the way it's edited in the movie.
How dare you guys talk about the scene?
Not Fab.
All right. Let's not start a war over Veb here.
I did want to bring.
He just wants his holes.
I did want to bring up Brian's comment. You wanting more Bill Murray? I think you're crazy for thinking that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed. Most of Bill Murray's cameo, but it was too long. Once he starts turning into bad Bill Murray, I could have done without that. I thought it was funny to bring him in. Hey, him and Michelle Pfeiffer had a relationship, and then you could have had a King's People attack instead of Bill being the
betraying
a bad guy. Yeah,
I think it would have been better if he was like, "Here, take my keys and get out of here. I love you." Mm-hmm. And you could have had a nice awkward love moment between her and Hank Pym, being like, "Wait a minute, you love? What is that supposed to mean?" And that could lead into the next scene. I think there's a better way to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say my only thought on Bill Murray in this movie is I think this is the better version of give yourself some love there, man. I think this is the better version of what they tried to do with Russell Crowe in Thor: Love and Thunder. He's in one scene. He serves a plot purpose. He does. He's in and out, and that's it. And I think it was done better than Russell Crowe, but I think that's all it was. Pez, you did bring up the post-credit scene. I don't want to spend another 30-minute discussion.
No.
And
my point is quick. My point is quick, and it's again a problem I think they're going to have going forward with this idea of the multiverse and the fact that if there are infinite numbers of all these characters that we can just pull in and out of these universes, then I think that affects the stakes of, and there's no finality to anything. So if somebody dies, well, we're just going to bring in another version of that character. If one of our Avengers dies, well, we'll just replace him, much like they did with Endgame. Well, Gamora died, but now we've got new Gamora. So like it's okay.
And I think the MCU's had a problem with death to begin with. Like the fact that you went through 3 whole phases, never really taking any, and I mean, when I say any major player, I mean like anyone who is in the top 10 build of any movie ever in the MCU. No one ever gets taken out. Like the kill list is Thor's mom, Rebecca Hall from Iron Man 3, she gets killed. I guess a number of villains.
It's all bad guys mostly.
Well, and even then, even in Infinity War and Endgame, Loki's dead. Okay, but not really.
But they bring him back.
Loki.
Gamora's dead, but they bring her back.
So, again, the Kang thing
Black
is
Widow.
Okay, the Kang thing is a problem
And
because
she had a movie right after.
Yeah, I
That
promise.
was their fault for doing that.
I promise I'll make this quick.
Yeah.
The Kang thing is a problem when they explicitly state in this one, this Kang that we're dealing with in this movie was a problem, right? He was the most dangerous out of them, and now he's not a problem anymore with a C-level character Avenger taking him out, which, again, you're already cheapening the character as a whole when he's supposed to be the new Thanos. Now, cut to the post-credit scene. Now we're supposed to have these other Kangs, and there's like this a number of Kangs that they're bringing in now with this Kang Dynasty thing. Okay, so we kill one Kang, but there's 80,000 to replace him. Why should I care when we take one out when we're just going to bring in a whole other version of him? I don't understand where the stakes are going to be as far as where's the finality. How do we know we've beaten this guy when there's, again, a multiverse problem of we have an infinite number of all this stuff? So where does it end? It never ends.
There's going to be a 20-minute segment in Secret Wars where we're just going to watch the Avengers take each and every person in that arena out. You're just all of... No, I'm kidding. I do agree with you, though.
Real quick?
Yeah, jump in.
So I was very proud of myself during this movie because I had to go to the bathroom for most of it, and I held it up until the very end, thinking that I could get back by the time they did the mid-credit scene. So I missed it because I wasn't fast enough, and my sister's horrible at explaining. Will somebody explain what the mid-credit scene was for Papa?
It's just showcasing the Council of Kangs.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're basically saying, hey, they're starting to touch the multiverse.
There's alien Kangs, there's long hair Kangs.
There's Pharaoh Kang, there's whatever the fuck. There's
I think part of that post-credit scene is, and I think this is a miscommunication part on the film, I think the movie was trying to indicate that in some sort of way this Kang was also a hero-ish, quote unquote, because the other Kangs, like, it's phrased in such a way where it's like, well, the other Kangs tried to stop me from what I was doing, but it seems like just as much he was trying to stop all the other Kangs from what they were doing. And I just feel like the movie very weirdly communicated whatever point it was trying to make with this version of Kang, that it seemed like at certain points, the way he's telling the story, it's like we're supposed to believe he's the true bad guy and the others were like trying to stop him. But then also it's almost like, well, no, what he was doing was better than what they might do. So that was confused. Jordan, Matt, Alec, you haven't seen it, but thanks for being here. Jordan, Matt, last thoughts before we close up.
For Ant-Man, it's watchable. If you want to have a fun little afternoon or night out at the theater, go to it. If you have to wait for Disney Plus, I can kind of buy into that too here. It's not one I'm going to probably repeat a lot. I wanted different things from it. I know that's kind of a not the best thing to say, but like I just that there's different moves that could have made, staying in the real world, different things, but. Again, what we got, I thought was at least an enjoyable time. It's diminishing returns here.
All right, and then Matt, final thoughts, we'll move on.
It's a fine, middle-of-the-road MCU movie. I think most people that go into the movie like they do with any other Marvel movie will come out saying, "Hey, I had a fun time watching the movie. I enjoyed this movie overall." I think there's fun things in it. There's things I definitely would have changed. Liked MODOK, liked Kang, liked the 2 post-credit scenes. I will say though, this Kang, I am convinced is not dead. I think we're going to see this Kang return potentially towards the end of Kang Dynasty, is what I'm thinking. I don't think he died, personally. I think he's going to come back even stronger, and he's going to be an even bigger threat. I don't know much about the Council of Kangs. I'm going to look more into it, kind of get an idea of how they connect with some of the other comic stories, and I'm going to read some of those and just see what kind of impact they'll have when it comes to going against the Avengers. And the second post-credit scene definitely gets me more excited for Loki season 2. I think it's going to be very important, but I do think Kevin Feige is smart enough to realize not everybody is the movie or the shows, so they'll find a way to explain it in the movies.
All right, and so with that, we will wrap up the discussion on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Of course, as with all films, good or bad, I always say check it out for yourself, whether you do go see it in theaters or wait for Disney Plus release if you're watching this and you decided to stick around for the spoiler discussion, even if you haven't seen it. Check it out for yourself, because at the end of the day, the only opinion that matters to you is your own. We're just a group of guys having that discussion. So we have a little under 30 minutes left, so we'll move on to another story, and I'll give you guys the choice. I'll kind of just general interest here. Would you guys rather talk about the Super Bowl trailers, which we didn't get to last week because we canceled the show, or I have a series of like small stories that connect to Hollywood franchising things, most of which don't make sense? What do we prefer?
The small stories.
I like the second option.
Yeah, the small
Yeah,
stories.
stories,
I think
like.
trailers are trailers. They're whatever. You're either more excited for the movie, as excited, less excited. Who cares? Whatever. It's
all right.
really
Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and jump into these. All right. So Hollywood is known to want to make a franchise out of anything possible, and over the last 2 weeks, we've had a couple of the dumber ones I've heard in a while. So I have paragraph intros for each. I'll read them. We'll discuss briefly, and then we'll move on. And we're going to start with the one that I think probably has the most potential out of any of these. That said, it's still dumb that they're doing it. Universal Studios and DreamWorks are working on adapting the acclaimed How to Train Your Dragon trilogy into live-action films. Dean DuBois, who wrote and directed all 3 animated films, returns in that same capacity, and he will also produce the live-action adaptation alongside Mark Platt, who has previous experience working with Disney on some of their live-action adaptations. The original trilogy of films are some of DreamWorks' most successful, turning major profits for the studios and receiving critical acclaim along the way. DuBois, who makes the transition to live-action direction with this film, said he's already begun enjoying the challenge of adapting his own work and is excited, to be back in this world, citing the biggest challenge being finding a visual middle ground between making the films have the same style that they had in animation, but with a naturally more realistic take, so as to avoid any oddities in terms of how you're looking at it. The film is already actively casting and is underway, leading towards production. It is set to release on, I believe the exact date is March 14th, 2025, which will be the 15-year anniversary of the release of the original film, which came out in March of 2010. So whoever wants to jump on this, I'll pass it over in just a second. As I said, of everything that's in here, this is the one that I think has the most potential. I'm a huge fan of the How to Train Your Dragon films. I don't know if it needs a live action adaptation, but I guess it obviously Disney, what no matter what you think of the quality of Disney films, they're making crazy fucking money on them. So it makes sense that somebody else would want to jump in that game and try and do it. And Universal now does own DreamWorks, and of the 2 studios they own, I guess I'd rather get a DreamWorks adaptation than Despicable Me in live action. So How to Train Your Dragon is probably the best choice that they can run with. Again, I love these films. I think they're great. I think that in terms of seeing like a Viking animation brought to live action, this could have real potential. It is just simply about how it's done. Papa, I'll jump to you because you had your hand up ready.
Yeah. First off, wow, I feel old. I can't believe the first How to Train Your Dragon movie came out 15 years ago.
Well, 13.
Wow.
13.
Still, that's way too old. I don't like it, but it makes sense. The How to Train Your Dragon trilogy are some of the best movies in the DreamWorks franchise. That and Kung Fu Panda, but also like one of the biggest TV shows going on right now, Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. So they're trying to capitalize on that market too. So it definitely makes sense why they're picking this franchise for those two reasons. I don't think they should do it, but there's a reason I'm not in charge of things.
So it's Dragonheart from 1996 meets Avatar meets Vikings, basically. Is that what I'm
It's
hearing?
not a bad take, yeah.
Because Dragonheart's like the same thing with like Dennis Quaid like befriending a dragon to take out like an evil dude. Like it's the same thing, and then Avatar is like a world of these things. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like I don't. It's funny they call it live action when obviously you're gonna have CGI dragons all over the place, which is silly. It's like saying that live action. It's like saying the live action Jungle Book when the one live action thing is the kid. You know, like
Well, I'd argue that
strange.
this is. I'd argue this is more live action than that, only because the actual like, but the only dragon I feel like that's actually a character is Toothless. All the others are just dragons. At least the characters in this are humans.
Yeah.
So there will be, and I'm sure they'll be shooting. I would love if they shot on location personally, because I think you could find some beautiful areas to do this in. Knowing Hollywood, they'll shoot on the fucking volume or something. But again, I would love if they shot.
I'm just always of that mindset. Remake bad movies. Don't remake good movies that still work. This movie still works, and it's still very recent. What was the last one? Like 5 years ago? It wasn't that long ago. The third one. Yeah. I mean, this series is still relevant. Isn't there still a TV show like right now going on, like off and on? Like, I mean,
yeah. There's a so in addition to the trilogy of films, it had a spin-off series that ran for I want to say 8 seasons, and that ran between Cartoon Network at first, and then it transitioned over to Netflix. And right now there's another spin-off they have going called The Nine Realms, and it's set in the How to Train Your Dragon universe, but it jumps it all the way up to modern day when people in modern day rediscover dragons who have been hidden away or whatever. I've never seen it. I just know the basic outline. And that's on Hulu, I believe.
It's the quote from Jeff Goldblum in the original Jurassic Park. You were so consumed on whether or not you could, you didn't stop to think if you should. Like, why? Why do you need to when these movies are still relevant, when they still work? And even Chris, we don't always agree, but he makes a good point. Wouldn't you just cast Gerard Butler in the same fucking role? Because he's like,
I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they'll go back to any of the same actors.
You know.
Okay. Actually, perfect timing that he shows up on screen. Alec, you are a father. I believe you're the only father here. So what are your thoughts on the fact that they're oh yeah, I'm sorry. Papa.
There's a dude in here called Papa.
You're not the 38th favorite dad anymore.
Okay, that's gotta be one of the dumbest things I've ever done. That's gotta be one of the dumbest things I've ever said. I've seen your kids before. Okay. You
cooked for them the other day.
What do you think about this? Debate. Because you don't have to have seen these movies to comment.
I don't care. I don't know. I just with these live action remakes, I can just show my son my son's watching like older movies like that I watched. Like he loves Toy Story. We don't need a live action remake to get kids to like these movies. Like Toy Story came out when I was born, and he loves it. Like granted he loves the fourth one more, but hey, you know, it is what it is. He's not perfect.
It's pretty.
But yeah. Oh, sorry. He got upset when I said that he wasn't perfect. But no, I just
sorry, son.
Yeah, with these live action
the movies you love, they're not good.
Yeah, he's also watching that really bad Netflix Spy Kids, and I'm just like, dude, there's such better ones. I'm gonna show him the first one, and don't worry.
Come on, man, go watch the Danny Trejo.
Trashing on your child, man.
That's like your introduction to Jurassic Park being the Netflix show they did.
Yeah, the Camp Jurassic thing or whatever.
Yeah, or Jurassic World Dominion.
Which from what I've heard was better than the Spy Kids one. But
I didn't say you weren't great. I said you weren't perfect. But yeah, with these live action remakes, I've gotten to where like I liked Maleficent's good. I like the Beauty and the Beast remake, but then after that, I just don't care. I'm at this point now where if you're gonna remake something live action, I would much rather you do it in a TV show and try and explore something a little bit deeper in the world. Give me like a live action How to Train Your Dragon show, Or I mean, I would say
Yeah.
if you're with Chris Diaz, cast Gerard Butler as the lead and let that man work. Like give that let's get more appreciation for Gerard Butler. I want to see him go full on like I want him to go full on like get fat, get big, get a big old beard. I want to see it. Why not? If you're gonna do it. But if you're not,
It's like the
I don't
complete opposite body type you had in 300, but the same voice. Like, just do that.
yeah, just do that. But yeah, I just
Is it
Fetch me
not
dragon.
that needs a big turkey leg?
Yeah.
yeah, I'm at that point where I don't want to like if you're gonna remake something, I'm
You're
gonna
gonna hate our
a
next story,
TV
then.
show, dive
Yeah.
deeper into it, give me a little bit extra. This is gonna do nothing for me, or do Shrek and give me a live action Shrek, but make it a horror movie. Let's go, come on, don't be cowards.
Jordan,
calm down
Matt,
with that.
any thoughts before we move on?
I think it's one of the best trilogies we've gotten. How to Train Your Dragon. They're all three really tight, good movies here. So I'm trepidatious, but I'll stay slightly hopeful as well, because especially if maybe they're keeping some of the same people behind the scenes for it.
Yeah.
It has potential. You know what I mean? Like, it does make sense way more than some of the other ones. So it has potential. So I'll hold out hope.
And then Matt, last thoughts before I move on.
I love How to Train Your Dragon. I think those three movies, especially the second one, are just fantastic animated films. Why the fuck are we doing this? Seriously, these movies didn't even come out like 20 years ago. I'm sure there's other movies that they can do and probably do as good of a job as they will with these How to Train Your Dragon. The only way I could think this would make sense is if they're more faithful to the books than what the movies were, the animated movies.
I wouldn't.
Maybe
do
they
that.
adapt the books.
The
books make
the
it
books
good.
are like a kid's guide manual. I don't think you could actually adapt those into something watchable.
Give Steven Spielberg the keys, man. He could do it.
Okay,
But no, I think this is dumb. I honestly think it's
That's fair.
stupid though. Why are we doing this? The last one came out in what, 2019, 2018?
2019.
Something like that. 2019. So like, why? It's been 4 years. I get it. They're some of your more beloved films, but why? Let's do other things. Like, let's adapt some other movies.
All right. So, well, since this went over so positively, speaking of live action remakes, Disney officially began moving forward with its live action remake of Lilo and Stitch this week. The film was originally announced back in 2018, but the production stalled following the original director choice, John M. Chu, director of Crazy Rich Asians, exiting the project in 2021. The movie now moves forward with Marcel the Shell with Shoes On director Dean Fleischer Camp at the helm and Aladdin producer Dan Lin joining in. The film announced its first cast members this week, with it being confirmed that the original voice of Stitch and the film's original writer-director, Chris Sanders, would be reprising his role of Stitch in the film. We also learned that Zach Galifianakis has joined the cast. It was reported by The Wrap that he would be playing the character of Wendy Pleakley, one of the aliens that heads to Earth to locate Stitch. However, this is yet to be confirmed by other sources, so as of now, he is just cast in the film. The movie currently has no release date, and in a weird change for Disney, also has no form of distribution, as Disney is apparently on the fence of whether to send it to theaters or to Disney Plus, and is more than likely to wait to see the final product before they make a decision. That, to me, is the most interesting aspect of this, because if Disney starts waiting for films to get made before they decide where they're going, that is going to be a telltale sign that a movie's probably not very good if it gets sent to Disney Plus. That said, I had no interest in this movie because of the same reason we all feel about live action remakes at this point. And personally, for me, John M. Chu only has one good film, which is Crazy Rich Asians. It doesn't do anything for me in terms of making a Lilo and Stitch adaptation. Dean Fleischer Camp is a much more interesting choice to direct this. I think in terms of like creature human companion with that film, with Marcel and himself obviously playing the human, I think that was really, really well done. And I think centering a film around that, like just delving into this weird world of these shells and the relationship that they growed, I think you can translate a lot of what he brought to that film over to Lilo and Stitch when you delve into the alien world and Stitch's growing relationship with Lilo. I think bringing Chris Sanders back to voice Stitch makes way more sense than bringing James Earl Jones to voice Mufasa back did, because this is not a voice that, I mean, it's just a, like, you know, anyone can kind of do that. So to have him involved in any way, I think is really cool. Again, of all the ones they've announced now with this director choice, this interests me more than some of the others. Because at this point, it is just about who's behind the film. You know what I mean? Like Guy Ritchie making Aladdin never interested me because I just thought that was a weird choice to begin with. You know, Beauty and the Beast was done by Bill Condon. Okay, he's a musical guy, so it made sense, but I thought that movie was good, not great. But like, funny enough, speaking of Disney Plus, like Peter Pan and Wendy is one that's coming up, and that interests me more so just because it's David Lowery, who's like an indie director, and he's already done one of these. He did Pete's Dragon, which I thought was good. So if anybody has any thoughts on Stitch, jump in, or we can move on to the next one. If everyone's thought is don't make live action remakes, we can just move on.
So I mean, I'm more fine with this than doing How to Train Your Dragon. Like, this makes a little more sense because at least there's been a little bit of time between the animated and whenever this movie comes out. I don't understand the Zach Galifianakis casting. I think RuPaul would have been a better choice personally, but that's just me.
That's fair.
You know, I like the director they got. I think, you know, he was a good choice for the film. Like with you, it does worry me a little bit that they're waiting until the movie is done to decide whether or not to put it on Disney Plus, because that will tell me right there if the movie's good or bad. Because if it comes out in theaters, I'm going to be a little more confident that the movie's going to be good. But if it's on Disney Plus, it's almost like Lady and the Tramp. There's no point in watching it, you know, because I know it's not going to be good at the end of the day.
As somebody who watched Lady and the Tramp,
I mean, I'm fine.
It was okay, but there's no point in watching it.
Yeah, I kind of passed on it. I was like, whatever, I don't need to watch this movie. But yeah, I'm fine with it. You know, like I don't think the original Lilo and Stitch is this like classic movie. So like movies like Lilo and Stitch, I think those are the movies that should be adapted. The ones that are like, they're solid Disney films that you might be able to improve on with a live action version, or just remaking it with, you know, animation.
Make Hunchback of Notre Dame live action. There's something there. There's been
versions
over the years.
Yeah.
That's one you could have fun, because the old Lon Chaney stuff from like 20s and 40s and shit like that.
Please
like,
don't bring the gargoyles back.
Well, no, you don't need the gargoyles, but I'm saying like they've proven they can do that live action, and it's been goddamn forever, 70, 80 years.
Yeah, that could be a meaty role too. That's why I was just saying, like, on paper, I'm going to slightly disagree with the last statement. I think How to Train Your Dragon is more of a human story that has dragons in it. So that to me screams kind of live action possibilities. Lilo and Stitch, you know, that to me, that's a cartoon. You know what I mean? Especially once you go, if you do more of the alien world, of the other aliens coming. So I'm afraid it's just going to be like kind of what we saw in Ant-Man. It's going to be a lot of CGI and some humans, and it's not going to totally work, and my heart's not going to be in it as much as they want me to. That to me seems like that's a cartoon more than a live action possibility to me. Again, I'll hold out some hope.
Dude, Hunchback of Notre Dame, a human movie with people, you know, granted, kind of, you know, a person that's like kind of, you know, deformed or whatever. Hang on, Aaron, hang on. That, or something like Pocahontas. Why would you jump all over that and do a completely live action
Mulan? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but again, like something like that. At least Mulan casted all the Asian people. It gave them roles, gave them, you know, like work. Yeah. You could do the same thing with Native people, especially get that girl who was in that Prey movie and do Pocahontas. You could do something like that. I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, there's work there, at least for those groups of people that would give them work, give them something to chew on. You know, like, I'm just saying, like, do that instead of all these movies that rely on animals and whatever. You know, like where you have to animate all this shit.
I'm gonna move on to the next one in the lineup. But just to counter that, I agree with you that like another adaptation of Hunchback or an adaptation of Pocahontas would be something that I think we could see and could be very good. At that point, I just don't think I'd want Disney doing it, because I don't think like one of the problems, I love the Hunchback animated film, but one of the problems with it is Disney tries to like dip its toe into the darkness but won't go there, and I don't think they would go there in live action either. Same thing with Pocahontas. Like that movie's dealing with some really dark themes but doesn't want to actually go there. And so I don't know if I want to see that again just in live action. I'd rather somebody who's
Christian
willing
Bale
to go
version that
there
came out.
do it. But anyway, so we'll move on to the next one that is at least not a live action remake. Following a decent box office gross, which saw the film break even, which I guess is what we're calling success now, Lionsgate announced Gerard Butler's Plane will be receiving a spin-off focused on Mike Coulter's Louis Gaspar. The spin-off titled, the spin-off
Train.
titled Ship will see Coulter Gaspar make his way off the island of Jolo by way of ship when he learns that the ship is carrying a dark secret. That's the log line. Though it has been said that Butler may return in a minor role because the film will be continuing the way that Plane left off, which for anyone who's not seen Plane, this is a very minor spoiler. Coulter's character does drop out before the end of the film and disappears, so they will be picking that up for the sequel. So Butler may return in a small role, but he will not be the focus, just by way of how they're continuing the story.
Right.
I haven't seen Plane, but this sounds dumb. I mean, Plane sounded dumb, but this is
I saw Plane. Did anybody else see Plane?
I've seen it.
I was sick when it came out, so I never.
Yeah, I saw it too.
Plane is very much one of those like mid-90s action movies where it's like very like low stakes, but it's kind of does things well, but like, you know, the acting's okay, the action scenes are all right. It's like 90 minutes, so they don't overstay their welcome. I mean, it flies by. It definitely felt like a throwback to like a 90s action movie, which I'm fine with because we don't get like 90-minute quick in and out movies anymore. So I was fine with that aspect. I mean, there is a natural setup. Like, again, we have minor spoiler. He breaks off and grabs like a bag of this ransom money they were supposed to get. So he's got like $100,000 or something in a bag. And I'm assuming the setup is then he hops a cargo ship or something, you know, to try to get out of the country. So I'm assuming that's the thing. I would be more interested. Let's cross it over with Captain Phillips and have that other guy come back and have him like fighting Somali
Look at
pirate.
me.
That would be a hell of a crossover action movie. But I'm assuming that's what it's going to be like. They're, you know, he's fighting pirates on the ship or some shit. But whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. Hey, if they make it 90 minutes and it's in and out, him fighting people on a boat, it's Die Hard on a boat, like Under Siege or some shit. Like, I'm fine with that.
For what it's worth, I didn't include it in the actual write-up because it's not been confirmed. But similar to like The Wrap reported that he was playing Pleakley, but no one else has been able to confirm that. I forget which outlet it was, but one of the outlets said that apparently the dark secret on the ship is prostitution or something along those lines, but nobody else has been able to confirm that that's what it is. They just keep saying that it's hiding something. So
that's fine.
Kind of like Pet
who
said.
Else saw Plane? Was it?
I saw it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah,
I'm in the same vein of like, it's a fun, you know, quick action flick. It's not one. It's one that I would definitely say, you know, it's fine that you wait until streaming or
if
DVD
it pops up on Netflix, it'll not take any of your time. It's breezy. You'll fly by on Netflix on that.
And in a way too, like I'm actually kind of excited for what's his name, Mike Coulter.
Yeah.
I'm kind of down for him to get kind of a leading role now. You know,
they don't previously.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I'm kind of down for him to now be the kind of the leading guy of it here because they don't really do much. Like again, it's a movie that doesn't do too much backstory. Kind of gets right into the action of it here. There's some mysteriousness as to why he's arrested in the movie because he's a prisoner in the movie originally on the plane, but it ends up being kind of a good guy, at least we think. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. Again, like it's probably one I'm not going to rush to see, but yeah, I'll probably check it out if they actually do go through with it.
Yeah.
All right, and Matt, why should they complete the trilogy with Train?
Yeah, so Train, I think is going to be very important because now I shouldn't be saying this, but Ship is actually going to introduce a new character because you're not going to have Gerard Butler anymore. So Tom Cruise is going to be in Ship, and Train is going to be Tom Cruise. But no, like Plane, like everybody said, it's a fine movie. It's one of those movies where if it's a rainy day, you just need to throw something on. Plane is that type of movie. It's harmless. It's a fine little movie. It's not great, but you're not gonna hate yourself watching it. It's a decent film. If they can do the same thing with Ship, then I'll be fine with it. You know, I'm looking forward to that movie more than Lilo and Stitch and the How to Train Your Dragon live action movies. I'll say that. I don't think it's gonna be a fantastic film, but it'd probably be a okay fun time if they kind of keep in line with what Plane was.
Yeah.
All right, so we have two more quick here, and then we'll close out. And again, if you thought the live action remakes were dumb, it only gets dumber. While at the BAFTAs, current Academy Award nominee and Gladiator 2 star Paul Mescal revealed that this week that the film will begin filming this summer, and he's already begun physical preparations for the role. The sequel to the Best Picture winning original Gladiator will take place 20 years after the film and see Lucius Verus on his journey to become the Emperor of Rome. Lucius, as a character, was featured as the son of Connie Nielsen's Lucilla in the original and was played by Spencer Treat Clark. Clark will not reprise his role in the sequel, with Mescal replacing him. Gladiator 2 is set for release on November 22nd, 2024. Ridley Scott returns to direct with a screenplay written by All the Money in the World scribe David Scarpa. Why does this need a sequel?
I don't care about sequels that are 20 years past. I don't care. That doesn't do anything for me.
Well, to me,
Ridley
this sounds
Scott's
like
barely
a
a competent
spinoff,
director.
though. It sounds like a spinoff, not a sequel.
It's
Like,
still 20 years
Well, they're
after.
calling it the actual title of the film is Gladiator 2.
well, that's
they
what I
call it.
don't understand. Call it
We'll
something
see if
else.
that sticks. I could see that
Yeah,
very.
I don't think they're going to
change.
call it Gladiator 2. That seems fishy.
I'd be
It's just so that
surprised.
we'll talk about it. That's all it is. They're just calling it Gladiator.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be called something else. I don't think they're
They give it a
actually.
subtitle.
No, I just don't
Gladiator
think it's going to have
colon.
Gladiator in the title at all.
I
Like,
definitely think it'll stick with
Oh, you
Gladiator.
have to make money that way. It's going to have
Yeah.
Gladiator.
Gladiator.
There
Yeah.
will be something tying it to
I'm
Gladiator
done
in the title.
Yeah.
There has to be.
Yeah.
Reborn.
I'm
Gladiator.
more concerned with the fact that the only Ridley Scott movie I really liked in the last 10 years was The Martian. Like The Martian is great, and then everything else has been like, all right,
I like The Last Duel, but you're right.
like Alien Covenant, Robin Hood, fucking The
Yeah,
Counselor, like his track record, like
Yeah,
Prometheus.
Exodus, Gods
I
and
enjoy
Kings.
I like
That one was
holy shit.
bad.
but yeah,
But you know what I mean? Like it's like Ridley.
Yeah.
You're like
Even,
8 years old,
that
or whatever,
his
it's
name
like,
doesn't give confidence. Sadly,
Yeah,
It's
not
like
anymore.
maybe it gives me a maybe,
Right.
but
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Like kids nowadays, like younger people, if you say Ridley Scott, though, they probably think he's like a lower tier director. When you're like, no, like actually, if you go back pretty far back, it's some really good stuff. But yeah, it's not great nowadays. But
I think you can even go back further and say like the last 20 years. Like he's really only made 3 films that I would say are very good to excellent. I would say The Martian's up there. I think The Last Duel's up there.
Yeah.
That one was good. And then was it American Gangster? Is that the one with Denzel? Is that what it's
Yes.
called?
yeah.
Well, and
Yeah,
the
that one.
extended cut of Kingdom of Heaven, I would include in
Okay,
there.
so but 4
Yeah,
to
yeah.
20 years when he's been actively directing is still
Right.
not a good number.
Right.
Right.
Like
And this being a sequel, like Alex said, 20 years later, there's more bad than good in my mind,
Yeah.
at least on paper.
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
no,
For me, I'm really
there
hoping
could be like
sorry.
something there. It could be. It could
Hopefully.
surprise people, but I think
And
it's good
it
enough
is-
for them to-
there will be one more film coming out in between it. He's currently, I believe they just finished active production and they're going into post-production on Napoleon starring Joaquin Phoenix. So he'll have one more coming out in
Yeah.
between.
Hopefully
And this
we'll
will
be
be
riding
in
the
a
high off
similar-
that. I trust Joaquin, so
And it's similar to
Yeah.
Gladiator. It'll be that epic action type of film. So if Napoleon is good, I think that could change people's perspective.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I don't think Scott's name gives you any excitement. And
Yeah.
again, All the Money in the World was fine, but I don't think it's an exceptionally written film. So David Scarpa writing the screenplay instead of just bringing the originals back. Again, I don't think. Again, now Scarpa's also writing Napoleon. So again, if that movie's incredible and that's why they've reteamed, I could see it. But as of now, there's nothing.
I don't
to
hate the
read
script for All the Money in the World, so that I'm kind of in the middle of that.
Fair.
I think like anything here, again,
Yeah.
like, you know, we've seen some good gladiator shows in the last like 20 years, Spartacus and stuff like that. So
True.
there's potential here. You know what I mean? Like we're not
Right.
shoehorning in a bunch of old characters here. It's kind of a new
At least they're
story,
not
so
trying to shoot
there's potential.
Bathorn in like Russell Crowe and like Joaquin
Yeah.
Phoenix. Like if they were trying to find
And-
a way
and-
to like
And
put
it
them
should be
back
said.
in it.
Well, so
Yeah.
it
Dream
should be said
sequence.
when this
Yeah.
film was originally announced 2 years ago. I think they first announced it in 2021. Russell Crowe was attached to it. But in a recent interview, he was asked about it. I forget what it was for. He was promoting something, and he was asked about it. And he said that he's read the script to the film, and of course, he praised it because of his working relationship with Ridley Scott. But he said that he is not in the film
Yeah.
anymore. The way that they've chosen to take the film, his character is not in it. He will not be returning for a performance in any way, shape, or form. But he did have the chance to read the script.
Now I'm
and-
curious as to what the original idea was. What do you mean? Like he was almost in it? Like what would he have done? He's 40 years,
Yeah.
20 years older.
Ghost or something. Matt,
Yeah, but
sorry,
what,
I
an
know you were
older,
trying to speak,
fatter
so I'll
ghost
jump
of
to
his character from 2000? Like I'm confused.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, last thought before we move on to the final one.
So, I really think my excitement for this movie is going to come down to Napoleon. If that movie is really, really good, my excitement will go up. I feel like Ridley Scott wouldn't do Gladiator 2 if there wasn't a good story he could tell. I feel like that's
Alien
one of those
Covenant.
movies where it's a very self-contained type of story. It's a great movie. He's not going to continue that story unless there's something there. I like Paul Mescal. Very, very good actor. I believe he's playing the son in this movie.
So
if I'm not
the
mistaken.
character he's playing is Lucius, who in the original film was Connie Nielsen's son.
Yeah, so I think I can't look at him like I do with Joaquin Phoenix in the sense of like, oh, he's going to choose movies that he feels is really good. Like Joaquin Phoenix, he's very picky on what he does, which is why I'm a little confident in Napoleon. But with Paul Mescal, I don't know if he's like that at all either. I mean, he might be, but he could also be one of those actors where he'll do just about anything.
And also, I think at this
I
point
think
in his
there's
career too, I
potential.
think he could be like, "Oh shit, Ridley Scott's attached. I'm in." Like.
Yeah, I was gonna say at
Yeah.
this point, Mescal
And,
really
like-
only has 2 big projects to his name. He was in Normal People on Hulu, which was a very successful miniseries, and now he has After Sun, which of course he's nominated for an Oscar for. So, and part of it is also when you're that actor who's coming up and you have hype, sometimes the Hollywood system just gets in there and puts you in
Yeah.
films and things like that. So, it's a very buzzy name to attach to a movie like this. So,
It's hard to pass
again-
up a leading role in a big movie with Ridley Scott, even if you look at the
Exactly.
script and go, "I'm not sure," but shit, it's Ridley Scott. I don't lead.
all
But
right.
not
So
every actor,
I will say-
will look at Ridley Scott and say, "I got to do it."
maybe at
I
this
will
point.
say with Paul Mescal, I didn't realize who that was. And now that I realize, like, his performance in After Sun is it breaks my freaking heart when I watch that movie. So I'm in, I guess, but I'll also wait for a trailer. But yeah,
he
I
sold
think,
you. Okay.
yeah, I think I want to see what he does next, because that performance in After Sun, like as a parent who deals with his own issues on his own, like that movie destroyed me, man.
All right. So we'll wrap
I
up the
think his
show in
next
just
movie's
a minute.
Carmen.
We'll wrap up the show in just a minute, but we're going to get to the final and, of course, the dumbest one, which is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey has been, for what it is a success. It went from being a single night Fathom screening to the point where it picked up a distributor, it earned a proper limited release, which it went in theaters last week. I believe it has already exited theaters at this point, but the fact that it got more than just a one-day Fathom is a success in and of itself. Very few films get that. In all of last year, I can only think of one film that went from a Fathom screening to a release, and that was Clerks 3, which had Kevin Smith
The
behind
meme
it.
one, that stupid Grinch movie got like a 2-week release. You remember
Okay,
that?
so
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
rarely happens, and so following the success of the
Terrifier
film,
2. Terrifier 2 was also supposed to just be a one-night thing and ended up getting a pretty full, like almost month-long run in a lot of theaters. It
Oh, see,
became
I thought that was just a release. I didn't
no, they released it and then it hung around because I know on at my Regal it hung around for another couple of weeks because it was making money. And at that point, there weren't that many movies in the theaters, period. So they just kept it in theaters for a little while. So it ended up making close to I think $10 million, which is a pretty big success for that movie that cost less than $1 million. So yeah.
So, so going back to Winnie the Pooh, director, I'm hoping to say this right. Director Reese Frake Waterfield has followed up the film's success by speaking on the franchise's future. Yes, let's get into this. Frake Waterfield said that he intends to ramp up the world and, quote, go crazier, confirming a sequel is in development to Blood and Honey, as well as financing is in place for 2 spin-offs, Bambi the Reckoning and Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, both of which are based on
Bambi, can we cast The Rock?
The follow-up will reportedly receive a budget that is 5 times bigger than the $100,000 spent to make Blood and Honey, and the films. He also said that the film's intentions are to be connected as a cinematic universe.
Fuck yeah.
Crossovers being in mind depending on the success of following films.
Yeah.
Just in case you were worried that we'd never get to see Winnie and Bambi go on a murdering spree.
Hell yeah.
Okay, so I'm not a horror guy. So I've openly said I'm not a horror guy, more so because I have a weird tick when it comes to jump scares, so I just avoid them in theaters and I check them out after the fact. But clearly we got 1, 2, 3. Well, I know for a fact we got 3 horror guys right here. Boys, this is what you've been waiting 2 hours for. Jump in and talk about this.
This is the only reason I joined. No, I'm just kidding. No, I am so excited for this. Like I am way more interested in a I guess it's more like a public domain horror universe than I was like any dark universe that ever happened in the past. Like this, I just want to have fun in the theaters. I want to go to and watch some dumb fun where people just get killed in crazy ways, and I leave and nothing changed in my life. Like that movie didn't change my life, but I at least walked out with like an hour and a half of fun. I don't take these movies seriously. I don't, but I also love them at the same time. I heard Blood and Honey is exactly what it was supposed to be. I haven't seen it yet, but I want to. But I saw it. I heard it's exactly what it's supposed to be.
I was gonna say, like, I saw that it pulled like a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I went fucking beautiful. That's exactly what.
Well, here's the thing. I'll tell you why that is. And I here's what I suspect. Most of the people that reviewed it, the way it came off in the reviews, they got screeners and they just watched it on their laptop. This movie plays with an audience. I saw it in a theater with a full crowd of people, literally a full theater of people. We had a blast. This movie plays to a crowd. It will not play the same you sitting in front of your computer watching it. It's not going to play the same. But I saw it in a crowd full of people. I think the filmmaker knew exactly what he was making. They don't go full on goofball, but I think he knows exactly what it is, like tongue in cheek. I think there's plenty of stuff to indicate that he's not taking it super seriously. I mean, there's literally stuff where the guy in the Winnie the Pooh rubber mask is just shoving honey onto the mask like he's eating it, and it's really silly. Yeah. Like he knows exactly what he's doing. It's over the top gore, but it's. I'll tell you this. I'm more excited for this cinematic universe than the next phase of the MCU. I'll just leave it at that. Based on what I've gotten this past phase 4 of the MCU, I'm more excited to see this fairy tale universe or whatever the hell he's going to call it than the next phase and a half of the fucking MCU. I'll tell you that shit.
So I have a question. Because I know like they couldn't use Eeyore. I know that like it was like they couldn't use the other characters because they're not public domain. Are any of the other characters going into public domain so we could like maybe see?
I think Tigger is going into the public domain.
That is awesome. I want to see like.
So I thought I read that somewhere. So in a future sequel, he might show up. As of right now, the only characters in the movie. It's not really a spoiler. The only characters in the movie are Piglet and Winnie. Yeah, like they're the only 2 characters that are doing the killing in the movie. Essentially,
8 Eeyore or something like that.
They allude to the fact that they ate them when they got hungry. Yeah, so because Christopher Robin was like feeding them on a regular basis. He goes off to college. They start starving. They have to get primal. And they kind of forget who they are, essentially. That's kind of the premise. And then almost a fairy tale thing. They do like a storyboard thing on screen that's a lot of fun, kind of explaining what's going on. But I think the movie knows exactly what it is. It's funny when it needs to be. It's gory and like kind of shocking when it needs to be. But again, I think it might play better with a crowd, but I can still see you having fun with it at home. I just think I don't know what these reviewers were expecting. It's called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. It's a fucking
Well,
Winnie the Pooh horror movie. What were you expecting?
I think what they're looking at is, this is just my perspective. I think critics are going to review a film as a film, and I think at the end of the day, because just my estimation of it, it looks like a really cheap, shittily made horror film with a fun concept.
It's better made than you think. There's some really like cinematic shots,
and so like the fact that
with the cinematography and stuff, it's better made than you might think when you see it.
But the fact that you say it plays to a crowd, I think that's exactly what, like, this is the movie that meets the definition of like, fuck what the critics think, enjoy what you enjoy. And again, opinions are to everyone. Your opinion is what matters most to you, not anyone else's. But this is like, when people talk about like critic proof movies, or this is what they mean. Like, nobody cares what, you know, William Bibbiano, actually he's a horror guy. No one cares what Alonso Duralde thinks. No disrespect to him, because I actually do respect his opinion. No one cares what he thinks potentially about this film and the filmmaking quality behind it. You watch this with a group of people while you're fucked up to have some fun. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
So I also
I want to address something real quick in the comments. What happens is, when I prep for this show, I prep for it, and then I do things like work and schoolwork and more work, and I don't read the news unless I have an open chance to. So I don't know what the Lord of the Rings news is, but no, it is not a part of the show.
I can briefly explain
next
what
week
it is
for whatever the hell the Lord of the Rings news.
Yeah, you can come on next week, Chris, and talk about that shit. I don't care. Like, I don't care.
I can briefly explain what it is.
No. I'm going with the gimmick. I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care.
And it's my gimmick.
What were your thoughts on Blood and Honey, Matt? I know you're trying to jump in.
Yeah, so I did go see the movie as well. I saw it opening night, and I went into this movie not expecting like Godfather or anything like that. I was expecting a movie that is not good, but a movie that is a lot of fun. That's what I wanted, and I didn't like. I wanted it to be like Cocaine Bear, where I didn't know if it's gonna be good or bad, but I just want to have fun. That's mainly what I cared about. I got that with Cocaine Bear, and I got a good movie too. I didn't get that with this movie. And I kind of feel the same way with the mean one that I felt with Winnie the Pooh, where I was just kind of bored watching. Like, there's a couple fun moments in this movie for sure. Like, there's a couple kills that happen that are a lot of fun. But I kind of left the movie like, well, I didn't really have a blast. And a lot of people did. So I'm definitely in the minority when it comes to the audience, because everybody in the theater was having fun. They were laughing. I wasn't getting that same response. But I'll tell you what. I'm not as excited for the Peter Pan one. I think there could be some fun with that movie, especially, with all the kids and stuff. But Bambi I think is going to be perfect. Bambi just being a killing machine, going around slaughtering people, and then eventually leading up to Bambi versus Winnie the Pooh. That is what I want. That is going to be the best. I don't care about Kang Dynasty at this point, or Secret Wars. I want Bambi and Winnie the Pooh fighting. I want a Freddy versus Jason like movie with Bambi and Winnie the Pooh. And then maybe they're like, you know what, screw this, let's not fight. We're both hungry. Let's just slaughter the entire city of New York. Like, I want them to go all out with this movie. The money they made from Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, don't use that on the sequel or the other movies. Use that for Winnie the Pooh versus Bambi. And just go all out with that movie. I make that your end game. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun, or at least I hope it is. But I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they made a ton of money compared to what they spent on the movie.
I still didn't.
So
I
it
couldn't
makes a lot of sense.
how much the Fathom Events thing actually made, but my theater was full, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Like, I couldn't find
well
how much
over
the
$1
movie
million.
actually made. But over $1 million when they spent $100,000 on it, that's a success. I mean, and especially when but you also know when it hits actual streaming for rental, like, people are going to rent this thing. Like, people are going to check it out.
Yeah.
So it's going to make more money. Yeah, it's going to make more money. So people are going to be curious.
Movie.
Yeah.
This is a movie that I think is going to be played at like get-togethers with a bunch of like teens and young adults. They're going to get together. They're going to hang out. They're going to get some beers or whatever other substances that they're going to have, and they're going to watch Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And most people are going to have a good time. I didn't have as much of a fun time. Maybe I need to watch it again. Maybe I need to get some friends together and watch it, and then maybe I'll have a better time. I didn't have as much fun, unfortunately, but it makes perfect sense to get more. I
So-
think
It made
Peter
$2 million.
Pan is a little interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
2
gonna
million?
say. So
Okay.
the initial Fathom screening, like the Fathom one that happened Wednesday, made just over 750,000 in the domestic market, and then its final domestic total was 1.75 mil. Its total worldwide total was 3.35 mil. So again, that is a very fucking good
So
profit
it
for a
made
film.
30 times
Yeah.
its budget. So that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, that's success.
And it is, I can say, it is out of theaters at this point. It dropped out on Thursday.
Sure. It'll be on streaming
Okay.
soon, probably within the month, I'm sure.
Oh,
It'll be
yeah.
on for rental. 100%.
Someone will pick it up. They'll pay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can already see it. You have the slasher with Blood and Honey, and then Bambi's gonna be your creature feature, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna have
Your fantasy movie.
stalker, like type of
We need
thing,
to put
Yeah.
like Peter Pan's like Michael Myers or Jason or something. Like
creepy stalker.
Flying around, yeah, something. I don't know. Yeah, and
I
then you
was
bring
gonna say,
on
and this will be the final comment on it, and we'll wrap up the show. Of all the news stories that I looked up this week, this was the one that educated me the most, because I didn't know that Bambi was based on a story. I genuinely thought that was just a Disney IP that they created. I had no idea that was a public domain book,
That's how good.
and I'm so happy that it
Yeah,
is.
sure.
Well, and you know what
Yeah.
else is public domain is the Jungle Book. The actual book is public domain. So like that's why if you ever look it up, there's like 200 movies that have been made about the Jungle Book, like worldwide in other countries and stuff. Because literally, Aaron, if you wanted to go in your backyard and film people just swinging around on a tire swing and call it
a Jungle Book movie.
You can call it a Jungle Book movie, and there's nothing.
Well, I mean, people will remember from a few years ago there was the dueling Jungle Book films. There was the circus film, and there was the Disney one by Favreau.
Yes, you just can't do the same songs. You can't do the same the exact scenes, things like that. You can't rip off the Disney stuff, but you can literally go in your backyard and make a fan film, call it Jungle Book, and nobody can do anything about it. So it's one of those.
All
things
right, so we're hitting about the 2:20 mark for.
I can't talk about. Oh,
did you not? All right, you have 1 minute. Go.
It looks fun. I haven't seen it. I hope it's good.
All right, so with that, guys,
I look forward to Peter Pan too, though. I want to see the Peter Pan one. I can see all the adults being on the island and being fucked.
Maybe that's how they stay young in this movie, where Peter Pan and the kids have to eat people, and that's how they stay young.
I don't eat them. I just figure like maybe they really hate adults and they murder any adults that come there.
True.
All right, so now we're officially at the 2:20 mark, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show. I want to say thank you to everybody who was here. Papa, Pez, Jordan, Alec, thank you guys for guesting. I would love to have you guys back in the future. Matt, as always, thank you for being here, man. Be sure to check out everything that these guys have going. Pez, you're over on the Movie Hero Network, reoccurring across a bunch of things there, so check that out. Jordan has his own channel. What is the actual name of the channel, if you don't mind?
The Purisco, yeah, check that out for trivia, countdowns, fun
there you
stuff.
Go. Yep, and he does a lot of just kind of like free-flowing stuff, so check that out there because it's great for interactivity. Papa, of course, runs some stuff over here on TMG connected to the trivia world, so check that out as it goes up. And Matt, of course, has his channels Inside the Horseshoe. And what is the name of your other channel?
Grab the Remote, which is where my Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey review is.
Absolutely. Check that out, guys. If you want to see Matt's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania review, we're just going to clip out that first few minutes there and send it over to him.
I didn't do a review. I didn't do a review because I had to leave for vacation. So.
All right. Well, I'll do you the favor, buddy. I'll do it after we're done recording. But guys, thank you guys, and be sure as always to check out the movie Battleground, which is the main flagship show of this channel. This week we had 2 matches go up. One was between myself and Chadwick Webb, so check that one out. The other was between 2 of our guests here tonight, in Jordan and Alec. No spoilers on that match. Check it out. If you want to see some more faces on this panel next week, on Friday, we have the first of our exhibition matches this season. It is going to be a sports exhibition match, and Papa is one of our competitors. As someone who has been probably one of the biggest proprietors of sports films being inducted as a category in the show, he will be a part of that matchup. So tune in to check it out. And on behalf of everyone here, thank you guys for sticking with us and watching. We will be back next week. I'm not sure what the topics will be yet, unless there's some major discussion point that comes out. Maybe if I see Cocaine Bear, we'll talk about it. But certainly going into March, there will be a lot of films to talk about. Potentially Creed 3, obviously Shazam, John Wick, and the way that we're going to do it on the show, the way that I think is best is the way that we did it this week, where I'm going to wait until a week after the film comes out to have the spoiler discussion on it, because I think it gives more people a chance to see it, and it allows us to sort of go deeper into it than I think we would seeing it the Saturday after it comes out.
We do have a topic for next week, Aaron. Lord of the Rings.
Oh no, what are you gonna do?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, well, tune in next week to talk about that Lord of the Rings story that I still don't know what that is. And I'm gonna end the show before Diaz can tell me in the comments. Guys, thank you so much. We will see you next week. Take care, everybody.
Mordor.